It is 6 p.m. and I call our meeting to order. And at this time, I'm going to ask Councilman Gary Cochran to lead us in the invocation and pledge. If you'll please stand.
Join me in prayer. Father God, we are gathered here tonight to do the work of the city. But more importantly, we're here to do your work. I pray that you give this council the ability to listen carefully, to reason thoughtfully, and to use discernment in our decisions. I also pray that all parties here tonight recognize that we share a love and a passion for this city, and that we can respect each other no matter what decisions are made. Father, guide us and be with us, direct us, and let us do all things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me go over a few housekeeping matters. Unless the item is a part of an official public hearing as stated on the agenda for 6A and 7A, you must sign up if you want to speak. No one will be recognized unless they have filled out a speaker form before a particular item is called or read for consideration. And you sign up with the city secretary over here. This we go through every time. Everyone shall also refrain from abusive, rude, or inappropriate conduct that hinders or disrupts official proceedings. I want to thank everyone in advance for helping us as we respect these rules. Given the level of interest in two particular items tonight, we'll be taking items 5A and 6A out of order. These items will be heard right after the 3A and ahead of the consent agenda. Okay, announcements of community interest.
Thank you, Mayor, and what a great turnout tonight. I just want to, on behalf of the city and the council, and thank everybody for coming out tonight. It's nice to see all these faces and this kind of interest in what we've got going on. And we're going to be real brief here because we do have such a long agenda. We just have one announcement. We've got the Daddy and Daughter Sweetheart Dance coming up on Saturday, February 15th. This is at the Hill Country Youth Event Center. This is the 12th year we've done it. I think this is the third year that we have moved up. I think we used to have 250. We now have 500 people that come every year. A big, popular event. I would encourage anybody who wants to go ahead and order their tickets. There are several outlets to do that because they don't sell tickets at the door. They don't sell tickets at the door because it sells out in advance. This is a great event, a lot of fun. I know a lot of moms have said, when do we get our chance? There will be a mother-son dance as well in April. So that is coming soon. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you. Visitor Citizens
Could
Forum.
I make one quick announcement?
Okay.
On January 23rd, early in the morning, if you have a residence or a business on Water Street or Guadalupe, you might see some volunteers counting homeless or attempting to observe homeless. So don't be alarmed. We'll have on vests. We'll be in teams of 3. And Carol Milberger over there is one of our team leaders, and she's done a great job of helping us understand how to do this. So
Okay.
be aware.
And Mr. Mayor, I would like to also announce at the Doyle Center, the Board of Directors, will be hosting a free financial and budgeting class. We'll start in 2 weeks. It will be on a Thursday night for 7 or 6 weeks, hour and a half. And there will be babysitting or childcare supplied by Shriner students. So and it's open to the public. So we would like to invite anyone who might be interested. If you had some employees and budgeting and finances were something that you were hoping to help give them more information on, please let me know or call the Doyle Center.
Good, thank you. Now we come to our Visitors Citizens Forum. This is where individuals can speak up to 4 minutes, about topics that are not related to an agenda item. So if it's on the agenda, then this is not the time to respond. And you do need to do a speaker request form to the city secretary. Also, because this was not on the agenda or whatever in terms of what the particular topic is, the council does not take action or respond, but it is an opportunity for citizens to express concerns or praise. Do we have any persons signed up?
Yes, sir. We have 3 citizen speakers. Eli Garcia.
Okay. All right. Eli?
Good evening. My name is Eli Garcia. I wanted to come to the meeting today and let you know that I'm running for a candidate for Kirk County Sheriff for our March 3rd Texas primary. I've been a Kerrville resident for 43 years. I'm a 1980 graduate, Tybee graduate. My wife and I have been married 25 years, 26 next month. We have 5 Tybee graduates. We have 4 out of 5 are military, 1 Marine and 3 Army. I've wanted to tell you that I had was able to do a career with HEB locally for 35 years. I've been in law enforcement 23 years, 4 with the Kerrville Police Department and 19 with the Kerr County Sheriff's Office. Currently, I'm Public Information Officer and Training Sergeant for the Kerr County Sheriff's Office. I just wanted to take an opportunity to let you know that I was running on the Texas primary for the Republican Party agenda and on the ballot, and wanted to assure that the council that if I'm blessed to be able to get elected, I look forward to working with the council in any opportunity that I can, so we can take care of not only the city but the county and make sure that we're there for our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eli. Bruce Strecky.
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. It's Happy New Year, and I just wanted to come back. I haven't been here for a while to talk about how great Kerrville is and what a great job you all are doing to make that happen. And we saw it in the paper this recently about the river trail going to Shriner. We have all the businesses that the EIC is talking to. Walt and Gil are doing a tremendous job of bringing new opportunities to Kerrville, along with the ones that are already before us that we're trying to address. Frankly, tonight, this is a good sign. We have the community involved, and the involvement this past year has really been fascinating, and I love it. And it's all because our city staff and our council is reaching out to people and being open and encouraging and getting people to come out. And it's not, in my mind, being at city council meetings in many neighborhoods in several states over the last 25 years, when we can work together, we never find a situation where everybody's happy, but we find a way that we go forward as a community. And that's what this is about. And to see the involvement we've had in different neighborhoods about different issues, about things in the city, the involvement with the zoning code, the involvement with 2050, and the things that we're working on with the housing study. And we're working on the subdivision code now, so we're going to have more involvement as that goes on this year. This is an exciting time to be in Kerrville. And people outside Kerrville are noticing. They're calling my office, they're calling Pablo's office, they're calling Sue. They are wanting to come to Kerrville and be here. And how can we be a part of this community? Because it's a vibrant part of the hill country. And things like our river trail and our wind paddle sports park that we're talking about on Lake Nimitz, and all the attractive amenities that we have in the greenest little town in Texas.
Yeah. Good.
They're noticing, and they're bringing good, vibrant ideas that aren't going to turn us into a big place. They're going to turn us into a better place. And it's not about, I can tell you, I don't have anybody calling me and wanting to bring 1,000 employees. It's small businesses that recognize that they no longer want to be in a big city. They want to live in a small town and be a part of that community. And we see that with the people that have integrated in this town in the last 5 to 6 years. They're becoming a part of this community, and they haven't changed the character of Kerrville. They want Kerrville to be like it is, and that's why every one of us who didn't grow up here, and I'm one of those people, came here because we saw something we love and we cherish it and we want it to continue on. Thank you all. Happy New Year. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Bruce.
George Peruti.
George Brody, 1616 Glen Road. First, I need to give a shout out to my grandmother, as my family celebrated with her on her 100th birthday last Saturday. And here's a little side note. So ironically, she was born in 1920, which is the beginning year of Prohibition, right? So, but I discovered her secret to long life was to smoke until she was age 75 and to drink 1 or 2 Johnny Walker Reds each day. So just so you know. On to the other stuff. So I'll be speaking to a few items on the agenda tonight because there seems to be a theme in today's agenda, which is growth. However, maybe not so sustainable kind of growth. To begin with, let's just talk on this about our streets maintenance program and what we now know about it. The recent Fugro report identified a few key factors. Our current backlog of street repairs is estimated to be about 22 million. It will take 4.25 million annually to maintain our streets in good shape. The city maintains 277 lane miles of road in its network. So what's our current proposed solution? Borrow $8 million to complete less than half of the backlog. Budget $1.8 million, not including the debt service, for street maintenance and increase that budget by $100,000 a year. Again, less than half of what is necessary. The problems with that, Mr. Cochran has pointed out, is the streets maintenance program is never caught up, and the streets will be a constant state of declining repair. Borrowing money to pay for deferred maintenance is an unsustainable business model that any good businessman will tell you. It is akin to paying your rent with borrowed funds. So what happens next month if you do that this month? It causes higher incidence of street failures, which that was showed to you on the graph that was presented. And our streets program is going to operate in the red to the tune of $2 to $2.5 million a year, each and every year. At the end of 10 years, without changing anything, the city will be carrying a backlog of over about $30 million of street repairs that still need to be done. This is not capital project. This is obligations that have already been promised to the taxpayer, and it is what property taxes are supposed to be covering. So there are obviously many potential solutions, and I'll throw a couple out there, but prioritize the street mains. It's not necessarily we need more money in it. We need to prioritize the street mains in the budget ahead of new expansion projects. Modify the maintenance plan methods to accomplish the same quality for less investment, such as utilizing chip seal in the standard maintenance schedule. Possibly put a moratorium on any new infrastructure development until a future balance of commitment can be designed. And as a last resort, obviously, you can raise taxes. Nobody wants that, but you know. But no matter what is done, status quo is not really going to be acceptable, as the city is heading over a little bit of a financial cliff if we don't address it. We're pressuring ourselves to require growth through speculation in order to meet our current obligations. We need to begin to evaluate each project that comes in front of you in terms of its short-term and long-term costs versus its short-term and long-term financial benefits. I would strongly urge you to call a workshop to address this before much more is done. Thank you.
Chief, would you come and make a presentation? Chief Danny Smith of the Kerrville Fire Department.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I have a person I want to recognize tonight who's one of our youngest employees. He's an outstanding example of a firefighter, team member, and a partner in the fire service. He's always prompt, humble, and ready to work hard no matter the situation or task in front of him. He has a positive can-do attitude, exemplifying the exceptional team in our mission statement. His medical skills are top-notch. and his willingness to train and improve his knowledge and skill set is what really sets him apart. Just mention training, he's the first one outside, fully geared up and ready to go. He was recently approached by to develop training for outside breathing apparatus to test our breathing apparatus samples. Initially, he was a little apprehensive, but he did not hesitate to accept the challenge and begin researching the process. His willingness to learn a new task and make the department more efficient is admirable, and it speaks of his character and is consistent with the second element in our mission statement, which is efficient methods. He always puts citizens first, patients and co-workers' needs, providing exceptional internal and external customer service, which is the final focus of our mission statement. His fellow employees has this to say about him. He is a good team member that I can trust with my family and my life. There's one area his fellow firefighters criticized him on, and that he is getting better at cooking thanks to the social media website Pinterest. These are just a few of the outstanding qualities that make Lane Ree the Kerrville Fire Department's 2020 Firefighter of the Year. Please join me in recognizing him, and when he comes, I have to say, in case you're wondering if he's old enough to be a firefighter, I changed.
All right. There you go. Okay, you can be seated. I want Lane to, he didn't know I was gonna ask him this, but why did you get into the firework, the medical?
Well, I have identical twin brothers, and also my dad is a firefighter in Fort Worth, so that kind of opened the door for me to get into it. And then how I picked Kerrville, since being from Fort Worth, is I was chasing this young lady down here. And I would like to thank you all for accepting me into y'all's community, and here's to many more years.
Here's to it. Mostly hot though.
I'll be real quick on following up. One of the things that Chief talked about was Lane's sense of customer service. The entire city staff is trained and reminded that citizens are our customers and we serve customers. And I could tell you plenty of examples of that and illustrations of that. All right, let's move to item 5. Yeah. And Ms. McElhannon, will you read that item into?
Vintage Heights Development Deal Points. And Mayor, we have 17 citizen speakers signed.
All right, okay. And let me say that I'm sure we have some people upstairs. And if you are upstairs, be ready to come down and address the group, please. Mr. Hoppy, would you introduce this item, please? Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight, you have a Vintage Heights Development Agreement Deal Point presentation, and we'll be tag teaming this between a number of staff members as well as the applicant or developer. I just want to provide a little bit of background on how we got to this point. This is involving a property that's approximately 225 acres along Highway 16 south of the Guadalupe River, really at the almost at the southernmost point geographically of our city limits. We entered into a development agreement with a Medina River Estates, which was the owner of that property, after a considerable amount of discussion over the 2018 timeframe. That development agreement at the time was related to estate residential large lots ranging in 10 to 20 acres, roughly across that 225 acres. That was entered into at the time frame about August 2018. Again, it was a large lot residential estates. There were a number of utility installations that were involved at that time, including perimeter water loop that was installed around that property, and a number of easements that were dedicated at that time that include utility easements, some right-of-way cul-de-sac easements, in addition to an extensive amount of right-of-way along a proposed arterial to match up with the community's thoroughfare plan along the southern boundary of that property. Around mid-2000, the owner of the property engaged with the city to talk about market conditions and market dynamics that were changing, and wanted to present a new concept for development of the property. That was presented, and we entered into a number of discussions to talk about various pieces of the old development agreement that would have to be unwound, as well as various steps to look at different regulatory elements to meet certain subdivision requirements, certain zoning requirements, other pieces of community due process that the developer would have to go to look at that potential concept plan. And so with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Chuck Kamick, the owner of the property, to further introduce his team and go over their presentation.
Thank you, EA, Honorable Mayor, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you. My name is Chuck Kamick, and I am the owner of the property that we're discussing, Vintage Heights. And as you know, we took a development plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 5th of last year to approve our plat and to approve the zoning change from R1 to R2. And at that meeting, our plat was approved, but the zoning change failed to pass on a tie vote of 3-3. So we have two options at this point. Number one, we can amend our plat, which would comply with the current zoning of R1. And under that plan, we could build up to 700 homes on the property. Our second option was to appeal to you, which we've done. But in the meantime, we've worked with the city staff, and hats off to them. They spent a lot of time, I know, over the holidays, and everyone has worked real hard. And at that December Planning and Zoning meeting, there was a number of issues brought up that were important issues. And we've worked hard to address those issues, and we're going to present our plan to you this evening that will outline how we've addressed those concerns to the best of our ability. Some things are beyond our control. And we feel that a win-win is better for everyone. We don't want to come in here and impose our will upon this community. We feel we have the data that shows there is a need for workforce housing in this community. And we feel that we have a plan to address that. And we're going to present that to you, and I want to thank you for your time and your consideration of that. Greg Richards is our attorney. He's going to present the details. There's a lot of questions. We make ourselves available for that. But in closing, I just want to say that a friend of mine gave me a copy of the most recent Texas Almanac as a Christmas present. And in 2010, the population of the state of Texas was approximately 20 million people, according to that. And in 2018, the population was over 28 million, almost 28 and a half. And at the end of this year, 2020, the population of the state of Texas is projected to be right at 30 million people. We've gained 10 million people, 50% in 10 years. Kerrville is not immune to this growth. And it's coming, it's happening. We've got to figure out how to manage it, how to control it, how to plan for it. And I think we have a plan that addresses the growth in your community and providing workforce housing and addresses the needs and the concerns of the citizens that were brought up earlier. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg Richards, our attorney, and we make ourselves available for any questions or additional information that you might need.
Thank you, council members. I know this is an important issue for you guys and for the community. It's one that we've been talking about for quite some time. And I want to apologize in advance for the length of my presentation. It may be longer than some that you've heard, but I really felt like us all being on the same page in terms of the facts that came out of the 2050 plan and out of the housing study, and the significant effort that the developer and the community and the River Hill neighbors and city staff have made to get to where we are so that you can understand that process. I couldn't agree with Bruce more that this is a great time to be a part of Kerrville. I've lived here for 25 years. I've watched it grow steadily over that time, and I'm excited to see what's coming. But Kerrville has a problem. We are a city out of balance. We have high demand for workforce housing, and we have a very low supply. Restoring that balance is critical to the continuing health and vibrancy of our community. In the last week, the Daily Times reported the need for workforce housing as critical, urgent, and desperate. But I think when you think about workforce housing, there may be a picture in your mind of who that is. You don't have to look beyond that young man and his lovely wife who just stood up here and got a certificate and an award. That's workforce housing. Workforce housing is also our nurses and our hospital employees, our firemen, police officers, paramedics, our veterinary techs, our entrepreneurs, our teachers, our construction trade professionals, and our young families. Those that will be here to take the reins of leadership in local business, government, churches, and civic organizations that we deeply value. In looking at the comprehensive plan and the housing study, I was interested to find a quote from a respondent to one of the housing questionnaires who said this, and I think this sums up a lot of what the housing study reveals as it regards workforce housing. Home ownership for most working people in Kerrville realistically needs to be between $190,000 and $230,000 on the top end. It's hard to find homes that are not in need of lots of repairs in this budget. Most people are house broke and can't afford to make a bunch of repairs after making a home purchase. We need more options for these middle-of-the-road people that don't qualify for low-income assistance and can't afford high-end luxury. I want to look at the demand and the supply of workforce housing in Kerrville. The demand for housing products is highest in the $50,000 to $75,000 household income group, which supports housing prices ranging from $200,000 to $250,000. This is that missing middle price range that the current market is having difficulty delivering. According to the housing study, there is pent-up demand currently for almost 1,800 single-family homes in this category. We've seen historical growth of 1,100 net new jobs in Kerr County in the past decade, almost 1,700 new residents and 801 net new households. Compare that to only 500 new housing starts of all housing starts that were across the board over the past decade. And this job growth is only going to worsen demand. Future job growth will exacerbate the gap between supply and demand for for-sale housing at all price ranges, but will especially impact those in the lower and middle categories. We heard yesterday at the Kerrville EIC meeting that KEDC is working really hard and is in the latter stages of negotiations to bring a supply company, manufacturing supply company that would bring almost 200 jobs over the next several years. We've also heard recently announced that the state hospital intends to hire 250 new employees. And Peterson Hospital, our county's current largest employer, currently has 70 job openings to be filled. So let's look at the supply side. There's a lack of supply in Kerrville, particularly in this middle market, with strongest sales in the $150,000 to $250,000 price range. As expressed in stakeholder interviews, community retreat, and open houses from many divergent groups, and as recorded in the comprehensive plan, the challenge of affordable housing in Kerrville is well known to this community. As of August 2019, the median list price in Kerrville was almost $300,000, and the average list price was closer to $340,000, well greater than the maximum affordable price for workforce housing. Since 2011, Home sales volume in the $200,000 price range have increased 354%. This indicates decreasing supply of homes priced below $200,000. These lower price categories represent the entry-level price for first-time buyers at or below Kerrville's median household income. The lot cost and infrastructure are the top two cost-related barriers in Kerrville facing home builders seeking to serve the $150,000 to $200,000 price range. Lot costs have steadily risen over the past 5 years, and the average lot price has gone from $10,000 to up to $40,000 for one infill lot. Overall, the Kerrville housing market has a shortage that, coupled with job and population growth, will only continue to worsen if the issue is not addressed. A conclusion from the 2050 plan said that the lack of inventory in the affordable categories will begin to affect not only the growth of the population of Kerrville, but also the health of the economy if workers and entrepreneurs are unable to find places to live. Many respondents to the housing study survey said that they had difficulty finding housing. Employers and newly hired employees shared in interviews that many had to have contact with the local resident with knowledge and connections just to be able to have a place to live. Our 5 largest industry sectors in Kerr County rely on individuals that this workforce housing category serves to accomplish the work that they do. Healthcare and social assistance, retail trade, accommodation and food services, educational services and construction combined employ almost 12,592 workers, which accounts for 68% of all jobs in the county. That doesn't count police, fire, government, and administration. When those sectors suffer, we all suffer. Here's an example. Kerrville is a retirement community. 42% of the population of Kerrville is age 55 and over. One of the greatest needs of that population segment is quality of health care. Peterson is the largest single employer in Kerrville. Many people who work there are in the income bracket that can afford to buy a $200,000 home. But you don't have homes, you don't have workers. The folks that provide basic services such as health care, education, retail, and construction need an affordable place to live in Kerrville, and Kerrville does not currently provide it. One of the guiding principles in the Kerrville Comprehensive Plan is to provide a diverse range of housing options to meet the needs and desires of all age groups, income levels, and lifestyles. In other words, create balance. One of the action items flowing out of that principle is to develop a citywide strategic housing plan with an emphasis on workforce housing and to research potential funding mechanisms for the development of workforce housing. The housing study that was conducted pursuant to the comprehensive plan was performed by Community Development Strategies, a leading national consulting firm based out of Houston with 50 years of experience. Their conclusion, and one of their primary strategic directives, was to increase the supply of single-family for-sale homes, specifically to encourage the construction of entry-level for-sale homes with existing infrastructure, and generally to prioritize areas with immediate access to existing infrastructure over sites requiring new extensions or added capacities. Vintage Heights is a viable solution to address the growing demand for the workforce. It's 511 lots on 225 acres. 40% of the land is to be dedicated and will forever remain open green space. The density of this development is 1 home per 0.44 acres, so almost 1 home per half acre. The houses will be close to the town center. There is existing water infrastructure and capacity at the property, and Vintage Heights will provide quality homes in the $200,000 price range that a person making within 80 to 120% of the median wage for Kerr County can afford to buy. Mr. Kamak has partnered with the largest national home builder who brings economies of scale, efficiencies, and experience in constructing homes. There are some benefits to the economy that are significant that I want to point out. First of all, the developer has used and will continue to use all local subs to complete almost $14 million of infrastructure work. And this is in phase 1 only. The builder, D.R. Horton, will use local realtors and will give local subs and suppliers the opportunity to participate in the project. All buyers will have an opportunity to close on their new home using a title company of their choice. The availability of these homes will enable the workforce who live outside of town to bring their families and their dollars back into Kerrville. 511 homes represents over 1,100 people plowing their incomes back into the community and increasing the tax base. This is the current layout, or I'm sorry, this was the initial layout that was proposed at the Planning and Zoning. The property is currently zoned R1, and there is space to create 700 plus homes. However, building 700 homes on this property is not efficient because doing so would require tremendous site work. Instead, the challenge is to get enough lots to reach a point of critical mass. That is, enough lots to spread the cost of the development, the streets, the utilities, the site preparations, and the drainage, while preserving the hillsides, which are difficult to build on. That number happens to be about 500 or so lots. In order to achieve the efficiencies and get the number of lots needed, the lots need to be 45-foot wide instead of 50, and need to have a 20-foot setback instead of a 25-foot setback. Therefore, the request for the zoning change. Ultimately, the average lot size within Vintage Heights will be around 5,400 square feet, which is 400 square feet than the minimum required in an R1 zone. To say it another way, other than a 5-foot difference in the lot setback and a 5-foot difference in the lot width, the lot layouts would qualify within the R1 zone. So on this existing site plan that was initially presented, you can see the layout of the subdivision, and most notably I want to point out the 3 connector streets in the green, be on the right side of the map, that connected ultimately into River Hill Boulevard. Hold that for a second and then look at this map, and I really want to illustrate here is this shows the existing River Hill community. All of the yellow is R1 zone and all of the brown is R2 zone. So you see River Hill community exists already with a harmony of R1 and R2 designation with lots of green space because of the golf course. This development will also utilize a cluster style approach where you'll have segments of homes and then large segments of green space. So there were a couple of concerns that were raised at the Planning and Zoning meeting and in subsequent conversations with our neighbors at River Hill. The first being the traffic through the connector streets. That was highly discussed and opposed. The second is to address the problems of traffic on River Hill Boulevard. Another issue that we heard was a desire for screening and setback between the River Hill subdivision and Vintage Heights. Another concern was whether or not this development would ultimately affect the property values within River Hill. In an effort to reach consensus, we had meetings with River Hill owners, and a committee was formed at the River Hill level to address this issue on behalf of the neighborhood. Mr. Kamek's development team had at least 4 meetings with city staff that included the city manager, the deputy city manager, the city attorney, development office, the fire department, and the city engineer. We went through multiple drafts of a revised site plan to get to where we are now. Ultimately, the current plan will require Mr. Kamek to spend about an additional $1.5 million to $2 million to accomplish the changes I'm going to detail below. I want to thank Mindy Wenderly and the APOR board and Bill White and his committee for robust discussion and conducting themselves with the utmost in integrity and professionalism. And I really will say, as a guy who argues for a living and deals with a lot of people, that it's really nice to have a discussion with somebody where you can disagree vigorously but professionally. And that was the case across the board throughout this entire experience. I also want to thank city staff for advocating for the good of Kerrville as a whole, but also doing an amazing job of being able to simultaneously support the concerns of our River Hill neighbors while trying to find creative solutions to bring this project to reality. And I'm happy to report that, as I heard this morning, the most recent poll among the River Hill neighborhood, the majority of those in River Hill now are in support of this project. Let me show you this development agreement deal points. I know it's hard to read, so I'm gonna just touch on a couple of these that I think are important. First off, as you can see on the new site plan, in the green and in the blue, the connector streets are gone. Instead, those have been redesigned for a cul-de-sac so that there will be no access onto River Hill Boulevard through this development. Second thing I want to show you is if you look on this, this is the area of the development that abuts River Hill, and those pink lines represent planned retaining walls between the two projects. And you can see there's lots of retaining walls. And while I won't go into a lot of the detail about the diagrams on the right, those show retaining walls that go anywhere from 3 feet in height to 15 feet in height. In some places, River Hill is higher, in some places, Vintage Heights is higher. And part of what we've committed to do as part of the development agreement is to build at a minimum an 8-foot fence along the entirety of where River Hill and Vintage Heights are adjacent to one another. Subject, however, to conversations between the developer and individual neighbors as to whether they want a fence or not. If they're 15 feet off of the ground, they may not want an additional 8-foot fence. But we'll leave that up to further discussion between the parties. One of the development points is to commit to leave 40% of the development in open space. That's in paragraph 3. And in paragraph 8, there's an obligation for Mr. Kamek to contract with D.R. Horton to purchase lots and build homes with the D.R. Horton product. And I've got some sample pictures that I'll show you here in just a second. And to ensure that at least 35% of the homes within the entire property will be 2-story and to commence construction no later than April 2021. In paragraph 9, you'll see that Mr. Kamek has committed to build only single-story homes within 100 feet of River Hill, and all of the lots that are adjacent to River Hill subdivision are at least 50 foot in width, are fan lots that have an average of 50 feet in width. You'll see on the site plan lots of areas kind of interspersed throughout phases 1A, B, and C that are designated for detention facilities. Obviously, those are just initial estimates now of what will be needed, and as this project moves through the platting process, that will get refined to meet the Kerrville requirements for stormwater detention. You'll see on the left side of the slide near where the pink is, that's phase 2, that the developer has committed to give the city a 50-foot easement for a future thoroughfare. This is part of the thoroughfare plan that the city has adopted. So it's the first segment of a road that hopefully will be constructed in the near future if the city sees fit to do so, to help alleviate some of that through traffic that currently goes through on River Hill Boulevard. What you don't see on the site plan but is worth mentioning is that all of the new utilities that will be installed in this subdivision are going to be underground. And just for your interest in talking with a large established local real estate firm, the broker that I talked to was of the opinion that the price point of the homes in Vintage Heights, which will run around $100 per square foot, would actually help to preserve, if not increase, the value of homes within River Hill. There are 2 subdivisions in Bexar County. One is called, I believe it's Redbird Ranch, and the other is Valley Ranch. And Chuck himself drove through and took pictures of the D.R. Horton line of product, which is the same product that we'll be committing to build within this subdivision. And you can see some of those sample homes here. All of the homes come with the landscape packaging, with irrigation and landscaping front and backyard. All of them come with a privacy wooden fence. You can see some examples of some 2-story homes and 1-story homes. and all of the homes will have at least 75% masonry construction on the first floor. And then last but not least, got to have a place for the kids. There are 13 acres of parks to be dedicated within the subdivision, and there will be 2 playground areas that will also be constructed, and these are samples of what those may look like. Vintage Heights directly addresses a guiding principle set out in the Kerrville 2050 plan and represents a significant step in accomplishing an element of the strategic plan set forth in the housing study. This project is in harmony with existing neighborhoods, having been shaped through collaborative efforts of the developer, the city, and River Hill neighbors. Vintage Heights represents the single best option the city has to increase workforce housing in a meaningful way and in a timely manner. In other words, it helps to restore balance in Kerrville's housing. In closing, I offer this. It is critical for our community to retain and attract quality nurses, entrepreneurs, firefighters, EMS, and police, teachers, construction professionals, and other young families to serve our community. If they are going to work here, they need to live here. Right now, these key members of our community are finding that most existing and newly constructed housing is simply beyond their reach. When people can afford to live closer to their jobs, the entire community reaps the benefits. We end up with a more diverse population. We provide the opportunity for families to live and grow in one place over time. And our economy strengthens by helping employers attract and retain essential and quality workers. Your vote to approve the development agreement and the zoning change that are presented tonight is a vote to restore balance in Kerrville, a pathway to helping our local employers find and keep qualified employees, and a meaningful step of accomplishing one of the primary goals set out in the community's 2050 plan. Mr. Kamak, myself, Mike Wilburn, and his team are all available to answer any questions you have, as well as D.R. Horton's representative, Leslie. She's also here and can help answer any questions. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, council, do you have any preliminary questions before we open it up for public comment? Okay, all right.
We're going to just real quickly go through a few staff items before we open it back up to you for questions. Again, wanted to just highlight 3 of the elements within Kerrville 2050. As you recall, as we were going through that process, housing was actually pulled out of several sections and dedicated to its own chapter, and I think that really signifies the importance that you all placed and the community placed on housing as we look forward to development within this community over the next 30 years. In particular, on item H1, the guiding principle providing a diverse range of housing options to meet the needs and desires of all age groups, income levels, and lifestyles. In particular, there are 3 elements applicable to this development agreement and this development in general, and that's developing a citywide strategic housing plan, check. You all accomplished that here over just the last near term and gave us not only great data, but some great strategies as we move forward and really planning our work and working our plan. Researching potential funding mechanisms for the development of workforce housing, in particular to that 80 to 120 range of average median household income. That's a particular segment that's a real struggle in Kerrville. And we'll talk a little bit about what that range is in a second. And then exploring the financial incentives and or infrastructure funding for developers, in particular for that segment of that 2,000 range housing, which is particularly acute within Kerrville. So just giving a little bit of statistics here, as you can see, these are housing starts over the decade timeframes that have been built really since the 1930s. Significant drop-off after the 2009 recession. You'll see there are less housing starts over this last decade than in any other decade prior to World War II. Fiscal year 2019 home sales, as you can see, home sales within that 200,000 to 300,000 range, and then a steep decline there. Really what you see is a significant amount of inventory that has been sucked up over that last 10-year time frame in those areas. So a lot of demand, but not necessarily a lot of inventory stock. This graph really tells it all. You can see that blue line is that $100,000 to $200,000 home. You can tell from 2008 to to 2018, it's almost a 40% decrease in the homes that are available for sale in that range, where you see that uptick in that yellow line, which is really that $200,000 plus type home. And what we've seen is the development community has just moved towards selling higher end custom homes because there are higher margins there, and really have moved away from the ability to build those lower priced homes. So who are the folks that are moving into these? Based off of the ranges that we were identified within the strategic housing plan on these price points at 180 to 225, it's really those folks making on average between $35,000 and $75,000 a year on average median household income. So these are, again, has been reiterated earlier, it's nurses, it's teachers, it's firefighters, it's police officers. Again, just showing this range of folks that can afford this type of housing stock right around that $50,000 in annual income range. So with that, I will turn this over to Mr. Drew Paxton to further highlight various points within the development agreement. We'll also talk, moving Mr. Barron up to talk about utility issues.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, this is the layout that was presented tonight with that amended lack of connection to River Hill. There are no through connections into River Hill, leaving the existing street stub outs for Green Tree Lane, Hickory Hills Lane, and Ridgewood Drive. Because of the subdivision regulations, this does require a waiver from City Council, which is part of that development agreement. Additional requirements that we've addressed over the last roughly month since the Planning and Zoning Commission. Per the fire code, they will be providing a secondary temporary fire access. It'll eventually be a future arterial and collector street through and adjacent to the neighborhood. That'll be gated with Knox locks for the fire department and maintained by the developer. Again, Mr. Richards talked about the 8-foot fencing, subject to any modification with the mutual agreement between the adjacent property owner. Amended to require larger lots within 100 feet of River Hill and limited to single-story homes within 100 feet. Some more requirements specific to the builder and the neighborhood that Mr. Richards covered, that there will be of the Horton product line, limited to single-family homes adjacent to River Hill, 75% masonry requirement, landscaping warranty on the homes, the 40% open space for the entire development, privately maintained parks with approximately 12 acres and 2 playgrounds, and home construction shall commence by April of 2021. And there will be a property owners association required for the development.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Utility requirements have been met. The developer has already built some of the perimeter water line around the outside of the property. He will also be responsible for any on-site property improvements that he needs to do and any off-site to service this piece of property. The developer will be permitted to tie on to those 3 connections at the end of Ridgewood, Hickory, and then on Highway 16 South. There is existing water infrastructure there that will be able to serve this piece of property. The City of Kerrville's long-range water plan shows for about a 1 to 1.5% growth over the next 100 years. The way that we anticipate planning or bringing those people into our water system and having raw water for those people available is going through conservation first. We do that every year. We're also working with a new groundwater well right now. We're planning a new groundwater well, and we'll be bringing that back to you in the next few months as to getting that started. And then we'll also be looking for and possibly amending some of our surface water rights to handle these new developments over the next 100 years. It won't take all of that to serve this one subdivision. And then the last piece of this is the drainage piece of it. The developer is going to be required to follow our standard requirements where they can't increase the flow or the volume or the concentration coming off of their property. I think this is a success plan for the 2008 Water and Wastewater Master Plan. This is the first one that I worked on when I got here. This identified 5 projects that would serve areas from the water treatment plant all the way out to Ridgewood Tank. Ridgewood Tank is the tank that's going to serve this site. All 5 of those projects have been completed, so we do have infrastructure there in place to serve this development. So, big success story there, all the way back from 2008 when they started planning to build the city's infrastructure. This is Ridgewood Tank's service area. On the far right-hand side of your screen is the whole service area there in blue, and with the tank identified with the red star. And then the outlined service area of just this subdivision is highlighted in red on the left-hand side. So that was the Ridgewood Tank service area. So with that, I will, Mr. Hoppy will come back up and
So let's go through a couple final points. This is an illustration of the thoroughfare plan that was passed with the 2050 comprehensive plan. As you can see in the dotted red line, that is a primary arterial roadway that is outlined as a general, it's not an exact alignment. This is simply illustrating a desired connection point between Highway 16 and Highway 173 to relieve other roadways throughout that corridor and accommodate for growth. As we've mentioned before, part of this development is a easement and an actual partial construction of that piece that borders along the proposed development there on the south part of that property. The remainder of that will be privately built, essentially, when those properties develop, but that is at least planned for, so that way we can ask for those easements and really require for those easements to be dedicated when those other properties develop in the future. Various elements also within the development agreement contemplate a incentive in regards to a property tax rebate of 45% after each one of the individual properties is sold. So essentially, the property has to be sold. It has to be sold within that price point that has been specified, therefore achieving the specific goals of the community related to the workforce housing as they've been outlined. And then it is rebated after collected, which is basically a year in arrears, rebated back to the owner / developer of the property. The agreement right now is contemplated for when 20-year agreement from the date that the first house is sold, and then 20 years thereafter at a maximum cap of $5 million. Termination prior to the development agreement would be required of the one, as I spoke of earlier, from 2019 regarding Medina River Estates. And there's also various easements that were in there regarding some cul-de-sacs and some other things that will need to be amended and revised. But that really is kind of a separate legal process. And then, of course, the acceptance of street configurations as consistent with the design guidelines. There's a number of subdivision waivers within the concept that has been presented before you today, including not continuing the existing streets from River Hill into the development, allowing for that stub out. That's a waiver of Chapter 10. Not providing the turnarounds at the existing streets since they're not continuing. That is a waiver of Chapter 10. And then overlinked cul-de-sacs regarding minor terminal streets. And that's really, there continue to have two access points via fire access and a fire lane, essentially a private fire lane that is being utilized until that neighborhood collector is opened up. And it will have Knox boxes, so fire will have access to that lane going forward. So with that, staff would be happy to answer any questions that you all may have regarding the concept or the deal points as they've been presented.
Okay, these are preliminary questions from the council, and then we'll hear public comment, and then council will come back for any other comments. Do you have questions that need to be clarified or anything?
Well, with the builder, so I'm the owner, so I don't know if it's the appropriate time to I wanted to hear again what your thoughts were about using local labor, local suppliers, subcontractors, that type of thing. I know you touched on it, but I was just curious if you could elaborate.
Yeah, so according to what D.R. Horton has provided in response to that their process is to offer up the opportunity to local suppliers and builders to participate. And so just like they would at any other location, they're looking for the best bid for the best product, and that's who will get awarded it.
And I imagine you have the, I guess, the standing with your being a national company where you probably have an opportunity to even bring some, product in at a reduced amount than what it would cost otherwise. So I'm thinking that if you build that many homes, you can get a break on whether it's lumber or other products that go into the home.
Yeah, part of the reason that this works with D.R. Horton is because they are so large and so efficient in how quickly and efficiently they can build a home, that this project actually works. In talking with Mr. Welburn throughout this process, his office has worked with no less than 10 developers who have tried to come to Kerrville, who have gone through the process of doing a preliminary plat, have done their study to try to build workforce housing, and every single one of them has left because they couldn't make the numbers work. So it takes a multifaceted approach with a very efficient builder, an efficient developer, incentives, and getting just the right mix of lots, having enough volume to make it work.
Thank you. That's
Okay, anyone else?
I have a question on the development agreement. I just need to know that this will last forever. And
Great
that
question.
it cannot be changed, can't come back with, hey, we want to do this when phase 2 instead of what was in phase 1. What do we have that will guarantee that if we agree to whatever we agree to tonight, that will be there for perpetuity?
So great question. So the answer to that is for any of you that live in a community that has a homeowners association and CCRs or covenants, conditions, and restrictions, those things apply in perpetuity to all the land within that development, unless there's an amendment, and that amendment usually in a subdivision requires some percentage of the owners all coming together. Well, in this case, all of these bullet points are going to be incorporated into a binding development agreement between the owner and the city, and that will be recorded. And all future owners of the property, if that happens to occur, and Mr. Kamak has no plans to sell the project, but all future owners would be bound by the same thing. The only way it gets changed is that the owner has to come back and petition the city, and the city would have to agree before those changes could be made.
Good question.
Okay. All right, let's begin with public comments and, okay.
Mindy Wendeley.
Good evening. My name is Mindy Wendeley, 382 Inglewood Drive. I am currently the president of the Association of Property Owners of River Hill, APOR for short. And just a briefing of what our role has been in this whole process. Our association has approximately 300 members, which represents a little shy of half of the residents of River Hill. Many of the board members that work with me are here in this room tonight, along with our association administrator. We became aware of this project when one of our members received his letter concerning the public hearing for the consideration of the Planning and Zoning Commission to change the zone from R1 to R2. We made inquiries with the city staff. We did as much research as was possible at the time and disseminated that information to our members and encouraged them to attend the December 5th commission meeting. Following the planning and zoning meeting, we called a special board meeting of the board of directors so that we could hear our members, listen to their concerns, listen to their issues, and to form a committee. We appointed a committee, which many of the committee members are here tonight, to research, to communicate, and to have great conversations with all parties involved. Our committee chairperson is Mr. Bill White, and he'll be with you in just a few minutes to go into more detail. We appreciate each one of you sitting down and visiting with our committee members. It is important for us to all be good neighbors. Since River Hill obviously is the closest established neighborhood to this proposed subdivision, we are keenly aware of all of the opinions. And I might add that the committee members, 7, were of various degrees of opinions. So it made for some lively conversation. We met with Mr. Kamick, we met with Mr. Richards, and we're very open and honest with how we felt with them, and they listened. You will be making decisions tonight that will shape our community. We offer our support to offer ourselves and our experience as you go forward with whatever decision you make. We have some experience now. We thank you for your time, and we are always standing available to help in any way we can. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill White.
Good evening, my name is Bill White, 513 Oakland Hills Lane. I misspoke the last time I did this, and I want to get that correct. My wife was all over me in River Hill. I think if you'd have talked to me 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'd have figured that I would have been standing before you today for a lengthy amount of time in a completely different mode than I stand before you today. We have received outstanding support from everybody that was concerned with this project, and I want to echo the comments of Greg Richards. The only bad thing he said is that I didn't give him a hard enough time, so I'll never get a chance to do this again. I'd like to inject, though, just a little bit into what we detected, we felt, and how we went at it, and what the what the end result was. One thing I want to clarify immediately going into this is that the River Hill community is not against workforce housing. That has been out there, and it is absolutely not the case. As Wendy mentioned, we are a major stakeholder in this since we are right next door to the project. I think there's another thing I'd like to clarify because there was some information, a comment in the paper today. This is not in your backyard thing. We had very, very legitimate concerns. We had a major interest from all the people in River Hill, and I'm proud to say that I think they were addressed in an orderly and factual-based approach. That being said, we have to recognize once again the cooperation we got with each city council member and the mayor. I think at the end of the day, I can stand before anybody that talks to me and tell me that I feel that we have communicated effectively and they've heard us. And I think that's to their credit. We've had very, as Greg said, strong communication, made our points with the builder and / owner, Chuck Hammock, and Greg. And at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is that they did address what our major concerns are. There are a couple of more that I'd just like to go over, and 2 of them have already been answered thanks to some input I think we might have given you all yesterday or the day before. A couple of things that I'd like to ask Mr. Kamick to do is to get with all those that have property right next to the development and go over the whole fencing thing. There's a lot of angst and concern about that, and I think that needs to get cleared up. The other thing I would want to mention too, there's a major concern, and I think a very valid one, about the flow of construction traffic that may come in through River Hill Boulevard. And I think that's something that needs to be pinned down. And my personal view is it's an issue not for the Kerrville Police Department and for us, but it is for the owner and the builder. There are 2 other things that we really didn't address because we needed to get to the issues that we thought we really could make an impact on. And I think you'll hear on the first one more from individual citizens who can articulate it much better than I. And that's the impact of the property value on the homeowners here. The other thing, which is something that's been out there ever since I've been here, it's only gotten worse. But we wanted to carve it out of our piece of this thing because we weren't going to solve it with the discussions about the Vintage project. And that's the whole River Hill traffic issue. The only thing certain is that this is going to make it worse. And I would ask you, as an aside to this, to once again focus on this and give us some relief and control it. In closing, our voices were heard. We thank you, and we stand ready, as Wendy said, to assist, make a better process so Kerrville will get better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kimberly Cochran.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Kimberly Cochran.
He may be upstairs.
may have to wait.
Right here, she's coming.
Okay.
My name's Kim Cochran, and I own a home on Castle Hills, 215 Castle Hills Drive. So I butt up right to this property. I just want to, I sent an abundance of paperwork to each of you members, and I just want to touch on a few things and ask a couple questions. My first question is this low-income housing? Is this HUD or anywhere involved with the government? I'm asking you. It's not? So the 45% incentive has nothing to do with the government? Federal funds, okay. Okay, and then the road behind my home, there's a road, it's an easement, I think. It might belong to the city, it might belong in your property. I don't know. Do you know anything about that road? Is that going to be between the houses? It's a road that was supposedly going to be used for underground utilities when it was, and it is platted right now for 10 to 18 acre lots. So
the only roads that'll be constructed are just those that are on the site plan.
But those, it's not constructed. I mean, it's there already. It's
No
concrete.
roads will be utilized except what's on the site.
So have you been out to look at this? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have my backyard.
Mayor, if I may, she's
Yeah.
talking about the easement to the gravel
dirt
road
road,
to the
yeah.
water tanks.
Right.
So that's currently used by city staff to service the water tanks. There's to a gate. That will all be reworked as this development occurs, and that gravel road will go away and be consumed by the development with permanent roads and lots.
So I'm going to share a fence with these homes. That's what's going to happen. Okay. That was one thing I wanted to know. And then, you know, I'm going to bring this up because I did write it to the council. And I don't have a lot of time, but D.R. Horton doesn't have the best reputation. Okay, and I've been online doing a lot of research, and the second packet that I sent to each of you and some of the committee members has tons of information and tons of complaints against them. Construction complaints, major construction complaints, warranty complaints, major warranty complaints, holding on to money that doesn't belong to them, et cetera, et cetera. And it concerns me that these type of houses are going to be coming in to our Kerrville area, and what could potentially happen. Because when this happens, not just one home's affected in the neighborhood, multiple homes are affected. And the other thing is, I believe that you put in underground utilities without a permit. Is that correct? Are you sure? So you got a permit. Eventually got a permit. You started it without a permit. That's not what I'm hearing. That's not true. So, anyway, I believe they started this project without a permit, and that worries me too because of the ethics of it. The other thing I want to bring to light is there right now between Holdsworth Project, Loop 534 Project, which is next to the new middle school, and the Meeker Project. Those three projects together are going to bring in 4,631.5 workforce houses, apartments, and townhomes. And that does include some commercial, but 4,631.5 workforce places potentially to live. Why are we building 510 more homes? And what's the hurry? What's the hurry of this? I don't understand it. I feel like we're going to overbuild for Kerrville. I own a business. I've owned it for 18 years. I've had people come and go. The people I have working for me right now, they don't want to live in Kerrville. They're younger, middle-aged, early middle-aged, and they don't want to move here, but they come to Kerrville to work at my office, but they don't want to move here. So, you know, we have to look at that. That could potentially happen to us, and we would have all of these homes, 5,000 units, and no one to live in them or buy them, you know? So we have to look at that.
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up because we've got
Okay.
14 more speakers.
Okay, I addressed some other things. Did you all get a permit for endangered species? Yes, there is. In the United States, there is. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there is. You have to have a permit.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Kim. Okay.
I'd
Walter
love to share the
Koenig?
rest of it with you guys.
I'm sorry, who?
Walter?
Koenig.
Koenig, Walter. Sorry, I didn't catch the name there.
I didn't recognize my name.
No.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Walter Koenig. I'm President and CEO of the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce, 1700 Sidney Baker Street, Kerrville, Texas. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all this evening. If one works in Kerrville, one should be able to live in Kerrville. This simple principle is one of those core values of our community and one that makes us as a community unique. As you heard earlier, we want our policemen, our firefighters, our teachers, our nurses, and those supporting our community in the trades and service industries to be part of our community. We want to retain the graduates from our great schools. We want them to stay in our community to pursue careers and to raise their families. We want the student roles in our schools to grow so that we can continue to fund the fantastic school system that we are all so proud of. Addressing the workforce housing issue is key to making all these visions a reality. Kerrville has a great many advantages and is well positioned for future growth and development. Despite these advantages, we have significant shortcomings. We have a very shallow labor pool and extremely limited housing options for those wishing to have a career in our community. In order to attract the kind of companies to our community who will ultimately support our city's economic growth potential requires concerted, proactive, and effective economic development efforts backed up with the housing options necessary to accommodate a growing middle-class workforce. The proactive implementation of the planned and thoughtful growth of our local economy, we view the engagement and recruitment of the best companies to join our community as fundamental. We want companies that bring high-paying jobs who operate in an environmentally friendly fashion. We want companies who are community-minded and involved. We want companies who have financial strength and the strategic position to survive and thrive over the long term. We also understand that every community wants this type of company, and we have to compete to win these opportunities. We also need this to support our local and current businesses in their growth aspirations. Our local businesses, large and small, are the engine that will drive our economy into a prosperous future. These businesses need a continuous flow of qualified employees to support and lead the growth toward success. We must also, and perhaps more importantly, capture the imagination and provide opportunities for our young people. We need to ensure that whether students graduating from Tybee High School, Alamo Colleges, or Schreiner University, that they have the opportunity to establish a life and a career in our community. To achieve this, we again need high-quality, career-oriented jobs provided by the best companies, and we need starter homes to accommodate the needs of this important part of our population. In many cities are wrestling with limited availability of workforce housing. In Kerrville, we're advantaged to have a city leadership that both understands and has prioritized this issue as critical. We also have community-generated comprehensive plan that likewise prioritizes this issue as urgent. After concerted and focused effort, we now have engagement from top-flight developers and the opportunity to make real progress in closing the workforce housing gap in the near term. The Board of Directors of the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce, representing our over 900 members, encouraged and continues to encourage the focus on the support of the implementation of workforce housing projects in Kerrville. The communities that figure out how to effectively address workforce housing in the end will be the winners, and those that don't will be the losers. It's just that simple. We need to work together to win for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walt.
Robert And the last name is Gohlke.
Good old German name. My name's Robert Gohlke. I'm at 231 Castle Pines Drive. I moved here 3 years ago from San Antonio. I lived in a tract home for 30 years. I was on the board of directors for 8 subdivisions, 4,200 homes. So I know how much of a thankless job some of these people here have. I'm just concerned, we need houses. We need growth. We need hospitals, we need all that. I agree with all the beautiful statistics. What I'm really concerned about is the reputation of D.R. Horton. And just like Ms. Eichner said a few minutes ago, are we going to stand up? And is it going to follow through? Of course, we're going to do Section 1 first, Section 2 second, and Section 3 last. So what's going to happen if Section 1 and 2 get about 350 homes, but all of a sudden we've pretty well maxed out, they're not all sold, there's about 20% lots still open, they're not going to open up the other one until they get it done, and they think, but let's sell it. And all of a sudden we move from R1 to R2, and even though they're promising not apartments, condos, don't use the word trailer homes, but all that stuff, somebody can buy it, and all of a sudden it's zoned, it's R2, and that does permit that. Going back on the credibility, and I don't want to throw stones. This is just facts. D.R. Horton is not a member of the Better Business Bureau. God, to get tongue-tied here. Has multiple class action lawsuits against it. Had a bad year in 2016. Apparently, I think her name, movie star Sandra Bullock, built a home. I think it was a $500,000 home. They had them built. She ended up bulldozing it down because she couldn't win to get it improved with D.R. Horton. They put $426.4 million, D.R. Horton did, into a fund to handle only legal claims, not fixing homes, legal claims. 2016 ABC News had a special where they did an investigation on D.R. Horton, and they named it New Home Heartbreak. And it's on the computer, y'all. Look at it. It's scary. I sure wish we had some builders here that could build, because I'm a country boy, even though I lived in San Antonio forever. And staying local, people are accountable. A lot of these huge businesses, they come in, they do their thing, they move on, there's the rules, and then it's a lawyer battle. And you can't go to bat with the biggest builder in the country. So that's what I worry about. My big thing, and I sent Mr. White letters, why do we have to rezone it? Can't we keep it R1 or D1, whatever it is, R1, and keep that restriction from apartments and condos and all that stuff? I know that they said they could put 700 homes on an R1. Well, they can't. They're not going to do it. That's not true, because they can't put them on those hills unless they, that's not feasible. But I sure wish we could keep it R1 and get the same number of homes in there that we got now, because I think it's still possible, and keep the future safe. We got to protect these workers, and they're coming in with a builder, and nobody here, everybody's local. Nobody here is going to be answering to them. It's to D.R. Horton, and it's an endless fight. I mean, I've heard, I'm out of time. Thanks for your time.
Would it be appropriate for us to Jerry Wolf? Before we have the next speaker. No.
Let's keep going through the public comment, and then come back to it.
I'm Jerry Wolf, and I live at 509 North Buckford. And I'm concerned about that something that seems to be getting to be the standard practice in Kerrville and even Kerr County now, and that's tax rebatements or tax incentives or financial incentives to come here and develop housing, whether it be homes or apartments. Every developer now, when they start a project, they come before you in this room and ask for money. As it works out, Mr. Carmack is coming here and asking for $10,000 per home to be rebated to him for this project. I lived for many decades in Houston. I saw it grow from being a big city to a giant city. I lived in multiple homes in Houston and 3 or 4 different areas of Houston. And I do not recall ever a discussion about tax incentives of any sort being given to a developer. And yet Houston just grew and grew. I don't see why that is necessary in Kerrville. This is crony capitalism that we have talked about. We hear about the national news going on in Washington, D.C., and it's here in Kerrville, and it keeps being perpetuated. And it's time to put an end to it. This rebate that is being asked for only amounts to $10,000 per home. I do not think that is a deal breaker. So I urge you to reconsider and drop the $5 million rebate from one of the deal points. Thank you.
Ward Jones.
Ward Jones, 2126 Bluff Ridge here in Kerrville. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'd like to take a little different approach on this issue. One of the most important factors for a vibrant, healthy community from both an economic and financial standpoint is the existence of a healthy and growing middle class. Having served as the chairman of the board of the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce and having sat on the KEDC board, a few years ago I wrote a series of articles in the Kerrville Daily Times discussing the implementation of several factors necessary if Kerrville was to enjoy the growth and health of a middle class in this community. This would also help to ensure and grow quality of life within our community. One of the key issues in that series was the availability of adequate housing affordable for the middle class. Kerrville needs to address that issue tonight through your positive vote to adopt this plan. This plan, along with the potential being developed by the McDonald companies and the potential for another development near the new junior high school, would give Kerrville the boost in workforce housing that it so badly needs to attract new quality business to the community, grow the existing business community, and create a healthy and prosperous middle class in the community. Done correctly, these developments will protect the charm and the environment of Kerrville. We will never be, nor can we ever be, another San Antonio. That argument against growth in Kerrville is a stalking horse with no validity whatsoever. Those who would keep things exactly as they are today will see this community eventually stagnate or decline for lack of a vibrant, growing middle class. Right now, approximately 50% of our workforce comes from outside of Kerrville, working in Kerrville. Also, 50% of the working people living in Kerrville work outside of Kerrville. It would be an incredible shot in the arm to this city's financial stability and to the growth of the middle class if more of our workforce could live and work in Kerrville. Public-private partnerships have proven to be the most effective way to achieve these goals. So I say, build, baby, build. Keep it within the proper guidelines. We need to maintain the beauty of the community. That can be done without any lessening of our charm and beauty as a place where people come to work and live, where families can grow and prosper, and where we can all continue to enjoy living in a very special place. Council, I urge you to please vote yes on this proposal. Thank you.
Could I have Guillermo or some of the staff give us a little less cooling. Okay.
We get the brunt of it. We're like icebergs up
Yeah.
here.
Trying to make sure we're not in the hot seat.
All right.
It does-
Okay.
It's cold.
Do we have a staff member?
They're working on it.
Okay, okay. Who's the next speaker?
Susan Doninger?
Okay.
Susan Deininger, 103 Turnberry Circle. Delaney, thank you for asking that question about the workforce, because Wendy Horton presented it the first time. They said they would be bringing in all the workforce, do the building, and then leave. That's one thing that's in some of our contract stipulations around here that they don't do, that they expect local construction, so that's good. Okay, I've been trying to imagine what workforce or economically disadvantaged population you have waiting to move to Vintage Heights at 200,000 and up. Then I read in a new deal with the city that they'll give a 45% property tax rebate on these houses for 20 years. What would motivate you to see your tax-paying citizens stiffed like that, as we will have to pick up the amount that they don't pay? Then it struck me. HUD or USDA government housing will buy, and part of it, in the buying up the property, they negotiate for having property taxes lowered. Will buy the house, give 100% financing with no down payment required of the buyer. There are no income verification loans. There are first-time buyer programs, subprime loans, all kinds of ways for folks to get with no money to get into these houses and keep the landowner from losing. If you could guarantee maybe 100 homes bought by HUD or the USDA in Vintage Heights, you could make them happy and you would be happy, because your low-income families currently living in areas that are in the way of gentrification could be moved there. Please tell me that you're not trying to plant folks with few resources 3 miles from the nearest HEB with a housing developing company that has a very questionable reputation for building quality homes or taking care of its buyers. There are all sorts of promises that come with this developer's plan, since the houses and lots are too small for any outdoor life. Judy spoke to that in a newspaper article. Really worried her. $200,000 for a house with no lawn, parks, a trail, streets. Who will see that any of this is actually developed? There are options for our economically disadvantaged and workforce housing population once it develops. I'm asking that you honestly answer, who is it that you are planning to put into this development? And how will you guarantee that it's livable and not just a way to get some folks out of the way of more financially attractive options? Thank you very much.
Bruce Strachey?
Bruce Strachey, 615 Earl Garrett. The layout and the use of space in the original preliminary plat is one of the nicest preliminary plats that have been brought to the city in the 12 years that I've been here. The saving of open space, the clustering of the homes are things that I've been talking about for years. And to see our zoning code that was just passed this last October get picked up and have somebody try and take advantage of that so fast, I was jealous, and I still am. Having said that, there are a number of ways that this plat has been changed in the last 3 weeks that really concern me. I'm very concerned about that echo. I love it. I'm very concerned about with not having the substreets to engage the neighborhood next door. We're creating a number of very long streets that have, in one case, I believe I counted 89 units, which is over 4 times the subdivision requirement now to have only 20 units. And they can sprinkler those homes, but that adds to the cost of those homes. So we have very long streets for fire code, and we have to sprinkler the homes. And so that's just really concerning. That's a big change. And we turned down a developer before this gentleman bought this property about 2.5 years ago, that it wasn't the same layout, but he had very long, they were like 1,000 feet long cul-de-sacs. And that got turned down here in the city. One of the things that I love about it, and what I started with, is that the topography has really guided where these homes are gonna go. And they've taken care, Mike's done a wonderful job, the engineer, Mike Wellborn, here in town, by the way. Wonderful job of looking at that topography and how do we site the houses and minimize earthwork and stuff. We have a neighborhood I think we're all embarrassed of across from the Croc, where 40,000 yards of dirt was moved to create lots where they shouldn't have been created. And it's ugly today, and it'll be ugly tomorrow. And these guys looked at it and said, here's a good way to do that. And so I think that commitment to open space is very important and a real positive, and it addresses issues in the 2050 plan, and it does it in a really effective way. But the topography and the social implications and the maintenance of an 8-foot wood privacy fence really concerns me. Somebody today said, why don't we just lay down the railroad tracks? And that's a terrible thing to hear from somebody. And that is not the kind of city that we want to be. The Housing Task Force document clearly says that our biggest need is from the median income down. And this project, while it's beautiful and needed and will bring housing and housing that will meet a part of our workforce that is very important, it doesn't really address the bottom half. And that's the part of our population and workforce that needs the most help. The original design for River Hill Boulevard was flawed. It was wrong in 1974 and it's wrong today. And everything we've done to try and fix it hasn't worked. And there are a number of ideas, none of them good, to solve the problem. But there are other ways to mitigate the cut-through traffic on River Hill Boulevard. And just ignoring traffic from a neighboring neighborhood does nothing to fix that. And that's really a mistake. We need to find a way to address River Hill Boulevard correctly. The last thing I want to say, and I'll ask for a little grace, 20 seconds. This development proposal seems attractive, and its significant open space suggests price points. But $5 million is a significant sum for us to commit with our limited resources without bringing new and creative ideas to Kerrville. This is the same product D.R. Horton has been building everywhere. And I'm not going to criticize D.R. Horton. It could be the same product David Weekley or Centex or KB is building. It's the same product. It's not anything new. We're not taking this and spending $5 million to get something new and creative. We need projects with higher density, residential with more efficiency to address our housing issues with our limited resources and bring product to help those who most need help. Offering innovative, attractive, and affordable housing to folks under the median income level in Kerrville. These folks have brought a positive and constructive development. Chuck has done a great job to try and address everything, but in trying to make everybody happy, he's ruining what he brought before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Moser?
Mayor, Council, Tom Moser, 240 Ranch House Road, County Commissioner Precinct 2, which includes this area. There's been a lot of discussion about workforce housing and the need. I'm not going to say anything more about that. The one thing that's been touched on, but I think needs to be focused, and that is the thoroughfare between Highway 173 and 16. If that existed, a lot of this discussion probably wouldn't even be here today, because the traffic concern. River Hill Boulevard has been a problem, will always be a problem. I hope that this discussion about this development is a catalyst. Let me say a catalyst for getting that thoroughfare together. I think between the city, the county, and the state, that needs to be brought up on the radar screen to a bright spot. I think it can be done. I think it needs to be done. So I think that, again, I hope that this discussion is a catalyst to get this done. And I can't speak for Commissioners Court, but I can speak for myself, and I've spoken with TxDOT and others. I think that there could be some good progress made with this. So, thank you very much.
Alan Cowan?
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. I stand here sort of awed right now. Some very well-prepared discussions and presentations, and I'm going to touch on some that have already been done. One of the things I'd like to suggest, with Mr. Mosier's suggestion, why don't we require that the link between 173 and 16 be completed prior to allowing this questionable subdivision to begin? Get it done when the high school and middle school are open together. That's going to add about 1,000 cars a day, both directions, on River Hill. Anybody can disagree with that. Count the number of students who will be coming out of this new, quote, subdivision. So, that's an idea. Has anyone here visited a D.R. Horton home development that's been in occupancy for 3 years or more and can speak positively of it? Can you speak positively of it?
I visited 4 developments in San Antonio. I talked to a dozen people. My kids lived in a D.R. Horton home in a development that is now 16 years old. The people I talked to were happy campers. And when you ask them the question, would you buy again? They all said yes. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody there was, but those that I talked to were.
Unique. That's wonderful. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you listening to me.
Doug Holmes?
Good evening, I'm Doug Holmes. We live at 217 River Hill Boulevard. 217 River Hill Boulevard is at the intersection of River Hill Boulevard and Hickory Hills. Consequently, we are right dead center in the development, or part of this development. Right up front, I would like to say that the revised plan that's been shown today is a significant improvement on the first effort in regards to not extending the stub outs from River Hill Boulevard. Other than that, it's kind of questionable. Referring directly to the deal points, one significant omission from those deal points was something that was brought out time and time again with the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Give us some space between existing River Hill properties and the new development. There's been a deathly hush about that this evening. Why? To try and put it in perspective a little, D.R. Horton, a major corporate builder whose revenue last year was declared to be $17 billion. That's billion with a B. Cannot see a way clear, along with the developers and everybody else associated with this vintage hype proposal, cannot see a way clear to grant a 50-foot green zone, easement, whatever you want to call it, between the proposed development and existing River Hill property boundaries. Obviously, I feel strongly about it because both of the plans that have been put forward have development properties backing right up to our back fence. To address briefly the workforce qualifications and their ability to purchase these properties for $200,000. Nurses, firefighters, teachers have been mentioned a lot this evening with respect to workforce. The salaries of a lot of these folks, good folks that we need to take care of, are somewhere between $35,000 and maybe as high as $60,000. Under normal circumstances, that would not be anywhere near enough income to justify loans for $200,000 houses. In addition, City of Kerrville Planning and Zoning states online that their commitment to current Kerrville residents entails ensuring the quality of life by protecting public health and ensuring logical development, land use, and utilities. I ask you if it's logical to place adjacent to $400,000 to $1 million properties that are going to be on sale for $150,000 to $200,000. I'd like to close by inviting all the members of City Council, the mayor, the city manager, anyone at all that's involved with decision-making on this development on behalf of the City of Kerrville to come visit our house, look out of our windows, stand on our deck, walk in our backyard, and then come look me in the eye and tell me that our quality of life and our property value is going to suffer absolutely nothing, no impact at all, if this development goes through. Thank you.
We have 6 more speakers and then a response from the council. But it's my prerogative, and we're going to take a 7-minute break.
I think you're about to say.
We are reconvened at 7:57. We are lacking 1 council member, but we will move ahead.
Where is she?
And I think our numbers are down a little bit on the. Oh, Mike, is Mike not working?
I don't think they can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Is the mic working?
Mike sounds like it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise.
All right. Now it's 7:58, and
You're in here, actually.
we are ready for our next speaker. And I understand we are down to 4. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Cindy Anderson.
Okay.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Cindy Anderson. My husband Bill and I live at 201 Castle Pines. I'll start by saying that we do appreciate the concessions offered by the developer to ease our concerns. But that does not alter the fact that this is simply the wrong location for a development like this. When Mr. Kamek bought this property, I doubt that he planned on tearing it up to build 500 small homes. He saw it for what it is, a spectacular piece of the Texas Hill Country, filled with live oak trees, wildflowers, native plants, and animals. And so he envisioned building country estates of 10 acres or more, with homes carefully situated among the large live oak trees. a development that would do justice to this acreage, preserving its beauty, its native plants and wildlife. I don't know why he changed his mind. But to build Vintage Heights as it is now proposed will require bulldozing most of the trees and flattening the land to make level building sites and roads. Even with the proposed green space, the majority of the land will have to be cleared. To me, this defies all reason. And I am shocked he would even ask for your permission to destroy one of the most beautiful tracts of land in Kerr County. The Kerrville 2050 plan identifies the need for reasonably priced homes for young families and for the workforce that we want to attract. I agree with that. But lately, we have been bombarded with calls for workforce housing. It's on the front page of the newspaper, it's on the Business Link magazine, over and over, to where it has become a frenzy. It is like we're already closing in on 2050. We've got to hurry. And I fear that you, members of the City Council, are being pressured to approve this housing proposal at all costs. But please, let's not rush to a solution that we will all regret. I see several more suitable places around town for affordable family homes. There's acreage for sale near the new middle school and the high school along 534. A development there would make sense. A place where kids might even walk to school, and a road that could handle the traffic. Or along Holsworth Drive. I saw several signs there yesterday offering large acreage for sale. The site where they want to build Vintage Heights has no good access to the new middle school or high school or to anything on that side of town. We've already talked about traffic problems on River Hill Boulevard, but from Vintage Heights, anyone working at the VA hospital or the airport, or parents taking kids to school or band practice or athletics or 4-H club at the Ag Barn, all those will still end up turning on River Hill to get across to 173. This is simply the wrong location for a large housing development. I urge you to approve other more reasonable building projects that will gradually fulfill the goals of the Kerrville 2050 plan. But please vote no to Vintage Heights, because this is simply the wrong piece of land and the wrong location for a development like this. Thank you.
George Baruti.
Here he comes.
George Brady, 1616 Glen Road. I placed, in case you guys were wondering, I placed that piece of paper on your table. Talk about it here in a second. So basically, first thing I want to do is clarify a term that gets used in the agenda packet, and I heard someone in here, one of the developer, I think, the attorney, use it as well. The term missing middle doesn't refer to price points. The comprehensive plan and the housing study both describe it as being housing types, and basically the ones between single family and the true full-on multifamily apartment complexes, the ones with duplexes, fourplexes, the small one-building apartments. So just to be clear, you're not actually meeting a need outlined in the comprehensive plan by doing this, because you actually are requiring them to make them all single-family homes, which is not the missing middle. The other thing is, one of the graphs put up out there points out that housing starts have been less during the current decade than previous decades, which is true, is factually true. But I think it's ignoring the fact that our rate of population growth has actually been slowing. It's not that we're not growing, but the rate of population growth is actually slowing in the small towns. And in Texas, it's booming in the big cities. So our growth rate is going to be shrinking over the next few years. Until San Antonio swallows us up, we're not looking to be a big growing, booming size. then the other thing that, this is the paper that you have in front of me. We're referring to workforce housing over and over again in here. And we keep talking about 225,000 being affordable to the workforce in Kerrville. You're putting out the number 57,000 is the median household income in Kerr County. You guys control the taxpayers in Kerrville. The city's median household income is actually, you've had it put out there a couple of different ways. The budget puts it out at 41,000. The housing plan puts it out there as 44,000 in 2017 and 46,000, I think, in 2019. Either way, it's somewhere in the mid-40s. And so what you have in front of you is something showing you on the first page that the workforce housing is 80% and 120% of that salary. And you can see that the highest affordability is 173,000 household value, which doesn't even get into the range that this project is proposing to build. We were told last time it would be anywhere between 180,000 and 225. So we aren't, again, meeting the need of the workforce that's currently here. And so I would urge you to keep focusing on the people that are here. It's the taxpayers that are here now, and that includes renters, because every landlord knows you're passing the taxes on to the renter, is the taxes that are being abated here are going to be paid by the people that currently live here. So you might want to consider that. You might want to address those people. The sale of homes, you had a graph up there. The sale of homes is 100 to 199,000 range, historically been the greatest by far. So why then are we incentivizing a project that has houses that are less? We're trying to recoup that gap, and instead we're incentivizing something above it. Nearly 300 homes will have one access point out of the neighborhood onto Highway 173. How does that reconcile with fire, EMS, and police safety? Where is the servicing fire station for this area? And not to mention the traffic. I mean, they're all going out one driveway. This is essentially asking the taxpayer through tax abatements to subsidize and pay for gating a community, River Hill in this case, because they're being provided with a wall between itself and the abutting residential properties, and the abutting of those streets. The better plan would be, as someone just mentioned, a different location. The comprehensive plan, I'm going to get turned around where the direction is, but the comprehensive plan envisioned growth happening to the north and to the east. This is directly opposite. We'd have to, and I'm wrapping it up, give me a couple seconds here. We are, this is in the opposite direction, which is going to force us to increase our infrastructure going in an opposite direction. And the benefit we get for that is we have to pay $5 million to do that. That seems backwards. I would urge you to leave the zoning the way it is, vote down this development agreement, and let them build it if they can, and focus on incentivizing to a proper place. Thanks.
Mark Faust.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Dr. Mark Faust. I'm the Superintendent of Schools here in Kerrville ISD. I've heard several previous speakers talk about the need for housing, and I heard teachers repeatedly. I can affirm, as a leader of the school district in this community, our teachers absolutely need what we're calling workforce or affordable housing. Our starting pay for teachers is $47,000 a year. That's after a tremendous increase in state funding. Still, our community is carrying the burden through local property taxes of the majority of the funding for public schools in our community, but the state increased funding. We were able to raise our salaries to $47,000 as a starting. But after 10 years, if you enter our district as a teacher with 10 years, you'll be making just north of $50,000. If you enter our district with a teacher of 15 years of experience, you'll be making $53,000. That's the way our salary schedule is set up. So no one goes into public education to get rich quick. And housing in our community that our teachers can afford is vital. I can use a very specific anecdote. Just after the holidays, I had one of our staff members who actually both her and her husband work in the district, came to me and said, "We love it here. We've had an amazing couple of years here. We love working for the school district. I'm not sure we can stay." The folks that we're leasing the house from, because we couldn't find housing, are moving back to Kerrville, and we don't think we can find something for a growing family. They've got a newborn, and and we think we're going to have to leave the community. And I'm begging them, please stay. We may have some new housing opportunities for you in the near future, and you're an asset, both you and your husband, to our community and our school district, and we would like you to stay. We've got brand new first-year teachers that they're out of college, they're on their own, but they're living at home to save up money because they can't afford to live in Kerrville. And I can tell you, I came here 3 years ago. It took us 9 months to find housing. We came from a large city market, and the number of opportunities there and the price per square foot is dramatically different in Kerrville. So housing is an issue. I was on the steering committee for the 2050 plan, and it wasn't initially a focus of the 2050 plan, but because it came up repeatedly from committee members and all the meetings, it became a separate and very important and very obvious issue. So on behalf of our amazing and incredible staff that make comments like, we just can't get ahead here, we love it here, we want to raise our kids here, but it's very hard because the cost of living is so high. Housing is a huge contributing factor to that. We want to continue to have the best and the brightest staff. What makes a great school is great teachers in a classroom and supportive, strong leaders. And we want to be able to we want to be able to recruit, develop, and retain the best and the brightest for our kids because they deserve it. Thank you.
The last speaker signed up lives at 809 Lee Street. I cannot read your name. Oh, I have you for 6, not for 8.
Okay, so, oh, okay.
6.
That have been 701 Lee Street, Garrett Harmon. Here he is here.
809. I have you for 6. You brought down 6.
6A, big boy. All we can do, we can do.
You didn't say the best for last, that's for sure. So.
Tell us your name, please.
Anyway.
If he wants to pump it, wants to.
What's your name, sir?
Pardon me?
Your name?
Ken Feldman.
What?
Okay, and address.
Pardon me?
An address?
What's your name, sir?
Address.
Name and
address. Where are you living? 809 Lee Street.
Oh, okay, all right. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I wish I can remember when this town was the crown jewel of the hill country. And man, it's potholes and pace now. And all we think about is more, bigger. I wish we would make things better. Whether you're talking about, you don't take care of what we already have. Whether it's a tennis courts, whether it's streets, whether it's school crossing signs, whether it's sidewalks, whether it's that pipe down in the river. Who's gonna rebate me 45% on my taxes? I've been paying taxes here for many, many years. I imagine they're gonna have new streets out in that subdivision. I don't have a new street. I have a great, with all due respect, if the best you can do is get a 3-3 vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I don't know as you people should be voting on this because I think there's a hell of a conflict of interest on it. But I don't, you got 500 houses, you're gonna have 1,000 cars out here on the road, more cars. We can't even handle the cars we already have. It's a bad deal for Kerrville. And it's a bad deal for the people that's gonna buy those houses. What are they gonna do when the appraiser comes and says, hey, that's worth $400,000 in 10 years? How are they gonna pay the taxes? How are they gonna pay the insurance? Everybody has problems finding affordable housing. whether it's in Fredericksburg, whether it's in Bernie, whether it's in Kerrville. I appreciated that man talking about the middle-class people. I looked around out there, hey, there's one, there's another one. We need young people in this town. How many of your children want to come back to this? Want to? What's there to come back for? This workforce housing deal ain't gonna solve problems. I appreciate your time and thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, at this point, we'll give the council opportunity to.
Mayor, I think they may have had a couple of numbers switched on.
Are there others?
What?
There were, but they signed up for the wrong item.
So they're gonna speak on the other item?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Any comments by council on 5A Vintage Heights? And I'm gonna start with place one.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, place two.
I have some comments that I wrote. I just want to let everybody here know that this has really been a remarkable month and a half for me. It's been a huge learning experience. I've heard from the River Hill residents, community members who have concerns over the development. I've listened to employers, school administrators, healthcare recruiters, citizens, friends, and stranger alike, all of who have been represented here tonight as well. And you've shared in this room the things that I've heard, and I appreciate so much hearing from everyone so that I, as your elected official, can make the best possible decision. And so I can only do that when I hear from you. And I applaud everyone's efforts, River Hill for mobilizing, coming together and speaking to me and to the other council members. You know, I appreciate what the city staff has done, and the process kind of went, you come to us. We have an engaged city manager who comes and says, what are you hearing? Because I want to help work this out if I can. What are the things that you're hearing? And I think that hopefully you've seen that this is not something that probably anyone in this room, including me, would walk away tonight and say, this is perfect. This is exactly what I hoped it would be. But just watching this process unfold and seeing the things that people have struggled with at least somewhat being addressed, I just want to applaud this effort and just thank everyone. You know, I've heard a lot about the cost of homes. I think we've had lots of presentations, and I think we've had a lot of opinions tonight. Just to reiterate, this is not HUD housing. This is not Section 8 housing. This is workforce housing. This is housing, as you've heard, for teachers, for professionals, for people in our community that need a place to live. I've been told that this is too expensive for workforce housing. I've been told it's going to draw low disadvantaged people into this community. I would encourage you to look, if that is a concern of yours, at the housing plan, where there are very clear indicators of what our community needs and what that price point looks like for our workforce. Now, all that being said, I do want to make it clear that I am going to look further on a personal level in between now and the next 2 weeks about additional traffic concerns, and I want to hopefully see some progress and some ideas being shared about and some assurances about the traffic from the construction and, you know, the additional traffic load. I do want to look more into that. Now, on the concern about the incentives, which has been a more recent concern, and we didn't see the final deal points on that, all of us, until Friday. I'm listening to that right now, and I'm taking input on that right now. And here's where I am, and I'll continue to look at this point for the next 2 weeks. All right, the tax incentives, 45% over a 20-year period of time capped at $5 million.
So first, I considered the concessions, and as you heard tonight, what the developer has made in concessions, which I will verify, approximates $3 million, and that's to accommodate the needs and the desires of the community, something that they don't have to do. Second, I would say that the city is receiving 55% in additional taxes than what they're receiving right now as a home is developed and comes online. Third, I would say you as a taxpayer are not taking money out of your pocket to pay for this. We will also be receiving money from revenue for water and sewer service and all of the other fees associated with living here now. That's the good news, but here's where I'm going to continue to look. Our housing plan does say that we need we have a desperate need for this type of housing, but I will compare those things that I just mentioned to you against any cost of services that it would take for an additional family to live or individuals to live in this town. I've seen some preliminary numbers, but I will look all of you in the face and say I want to be assured that what we may end up going forward with is not going to take money out of your pocket. And that's my promise to you. So again, I want to thank everybody for sharing. I hope you feel like you're listened to, and I hope that, all of us can come together with whatever decision we decide to make for the good of the community.
Okay, those three.
I would like to make a couple comments also. I too would like to thank our owner, our developer, all of you who have been working so hard on this. Would like to thank the city staff. This is a big deal. We all know that. And I just appreciate everyone. I appreciate River Hill, the people there, and I appreciate your professionalism. And we've been able, at least from what I have seen and heard, people are talking and have been able to continue to talk. So I hope that when this is all said and done, that's what we will continue to, that's where we'll continue to be. I did visit some D.R. Hortons. When we talk a little bit about how the development looks, I did visit the D.R. Hortons in San Antonio, and I found nice looking subdivisions. I didn't find houses falling apart, and as I said, a couple of the subdivisions were 15, 16 years old. As I look at their homes and then I envision those homes in this area, I think we would have a fantastic looking subdivision. We have rolling hills and open space with this area that they do not have in the San Antonio subdivisions. They're just one house right after another, and they don't have the open space that we're going to have. One of the things that we hear is that this is low-income housing. This is not low-income housing. $200,000 homes are not low income. And we need to keep that in mind. This is for the working class. This is for our 20 and 30-year-olds who are starting their families, starting in the workforce. It's entry housing for them. It gives them an opportunity to start equity, but yet gives them something that they can call their own. And we need to not call it low income because it is not. And again, there's no HUD, no Section 8. Kim just mentioned that. That is not what this kind of housing is like. I also would like to say, I think that the two developments that we're looking at, River Hill is one of the most popular subdivisions in town. Houses sell well in there. People want to live in River Hill. They love it. It has it's just wonderful to drive through there. That subdivision is not going to lose what it's got. It's not going to lose that prestige and that look. This subdivision is not going to be River Hill. It's going to have a good look, because of where it's going to be situated and what the houses are going to look like. But it's an entirely different subdivision. And they're not going to conflict. And I just do not feel that River Hill values are going to go down. River Hill's going to retain your values. This subdivision is giving us something entirely different that is needed. And it's not going to conflict. It's not going to affect River Hill as far as values from my standpoint and from my professional standpoint as a realtor. I think I just appreciate our owner and the things that he has come back with. A lot of my questions, some questions that I had tonight, have been answered. But when you look at what he's offering in these homes, underground utilities, sprinkler systems, open floor plans for young people, that's what they're looking for. Our entry-level people want houses that they don't have to fix up, and that's not what we have to offer them now at $200,000. They want smart homes. These are things that will appeal to them, and it will serve a need that we need desperately. So I just thank all of you for all that you're doing, and my hope and prayer and goal is that when we finish here, we have made the best decision for Kerrville, and that we all remain friends.
Ditto. You know, I didn't go to the planning and zoning meeting on December 5th, but I've watched the video twice now, and I came away with 2 pages of notes and then added to it. What impressed me the most with this whole process was the owner listened. We took notes. We went back to our city manager and our city staff and said, well, what about this traffic issue and the stub streets? And I was almost surprised because in this day and age, usually people stay on their ground, and this is what we have to do to make the bottom line work. But the owner was very flexible, and I thought he showed great confidence in the fact this will be a good thing for Kerrville by some of the things he agreed to do. And I think Mindy and I were talking earlier about the fact the communication's already gotten better amongst, I met Mr. White, we met with him, I met with various other River Hill owners that I had not met with before. So we did our best to listen and continue to take that information back to the ones who could make a difference. I think the development agreement is very thorough. Like Kim and other people have said, is it perfect? Maybe it's not perfect. I'm not sure there is such a thing. And since I have been involved in the city since 2015, my goal was to talk to every top employer in the city, and all they said was, we can't hire this person. We can't bring on a new staff person because we don't have a housing for them. So it wasn't talked about as much back in 2015. We had a lot of other things going on, but now it has risen to the top, and I think we really have to, we can't afford to not consider this. And we have. We've considered all of your concerns. I myself live on a stubbed out street in Comanche Trace. Someday, I probably will face the very same change in where I live, but I'll have a choice. I can live with it, or I can begin to plan another place to live. I don't know what else to do. I mean, the facts are what they are, and I hope we can work together. If there are more things that need to come out of this, let's do it, but let's get it done. That's my feelings.
All right, thank you. Let me tell you, I have talked to and listened to a lot of people in River Hill. I know people on probably every street in River Hill, and I have for years. Church members of mine and friends all over the place. I will say I did get 37 emails, and I have not. This weekend I've been away and dealing with 2 deaths, and I have only answered a few folks, but I will answer more. This morning I walked the whole distance of River Hill back and forth, and it's about 8 o'clock, and so the school traffic had already come by, but there were a lot of trucks, not double axle, which we've prohibited, but trucks and cars and other vehicles. I'm assuming were not folks from River Hill. And we're gonna have problems with traffic. Just, it's there. The other thing I will say is walking along River Hill this morning and looking at some of the homes, I thought, you know what, if I'd had a good career and had the money to buy or build that home, I want security. I don't want that to be devalued. But let me mention a couple other things. By the way, I don't know if any of you ever watch Fixer Upper and the Gaines, you know, Chip and Joanna. Chuck, is there any way to get some shiplap in these places? But okay, but remember that the city did not initiate this. You have a developer who bought the land and then contracted with the builder, D.R. Horton. But we didn't bring that in. So the city has dealt with this development. One of the other things to remember is this. Tonight, we're going to vote on, and there's another hearing also, R2, the changed plan. If we vote that down, the developer still has R1 and the contract with D.R. Horton, which he can go back to. So the question is R2 better for everybody, including River Hill? I'm hoping in regard to D.R. Horton that our city's process of permitting and inspection and fire and safety standards will help to ensure that we have a good product. Just a couple other things. I was on the committee to plan strategy planning for economic development for the county and city 10 years ago. Pat Tinley was then the county judge and chaired that and chaired it very ably. What the consultants told us was, among other things, we had 16% above the state average on housing. We had 30% below the state average on wages. That's not good. The other thing they said was, this economy can't be sustained long term. You've got to have more young adults, attract more young adults, keep more young adults, and you got to diversify into more manufacturing and diversity in retail and everything else. I chaired the task force on workforce housing. And one of the things we discovered was Texas A&M Real Estate Center, and that director is going to be here for the economic summit in just a few weeks again. That retail center at Texas A&M has shown that I believe there's 28 cities and areas in the state that they have looked at in terms of affordable housing. Kerrville is last. Now, I'm going to tell you, we've talked about nurses and teachers and so forth. The folks that all of us need, and I'm a senior adult, 73, that all of us need, and maybe especially older, we need to have housing so they can be here. Nurses and physical therapists and plumbers and electricians and everybody else. And quickly, one thing that's been mentioned about the price. What we've discovered is our local builders say we cannot build for $150,000. Given the price of land and lumber and labor, they said we maybe can do $185,000. And some of these homes are going to start at $185,000. So, you know, we got to struggle. How are we going to get there? But what the superintendent said a while ago, I'm hearing this. I had one of our largest construction companies recently hired 2 supervisory personnel who came back and said, we cannot take the jobs. We cannot find a place to live that we afford. So Is this perfect? No. I wish it were. But I personally believe that we need to move forward with the R2. And we'll move to vote on that in a minute. And Mr. Hayes, I realized I was supposed to call on you earlier.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
You want me to go? I think y'all are on a roll if you want to. But the only thing I'll say is this process that you're going through now for these deal points is separate than the zoning, and you've touched on that. So in other words, whatever you vote here, the zoning piece to this via the zoning ordinance, which will be your next item, it's a separate independent process, up to your discretion. I want that to be clear. I've told you all that, but that ought to be clear to the public as well.
Okay.
So, to be clear with the question I asked earlier, as an ordinance, the zoning change has 2 readings. The
Yes.
first one will be tonight.
Right.
If it goes forward, the next one will be in 2 weeks.
Yes.
So tonight, we're gonna vote to authorize or not authorize the city manager to work with the city attorney to develop this agreement that we'll look at next time. Am I right on that?
These are deal points
Right.
meant to kind of memorialize the expectations of the
Mhm.
parties. There are certainly some things in here that deal with zoning. We both parties felt like it was important to get those on paper, just so to kind of know where we're going. There are some issues in here that deal with plating. That'll be carried out via the plating process, and they're right in the middle of that, as they've talked about. So there's kind of a lot of moving pieces, but they are independent processes, independent decisions. The zoning process is based on state law and then of course our zoning code, and so that's you'll handle that via the next ordinance, which will take 2 readings. These deal points, if approved, will then come back to you at a future date via a more fully robust and specific development agreement.
Our first item is to authorize the city manager to enter into negotiations for the deal points as presented to us.
That's what, if you approve the deal points, the developer has already approved those by signature. That's the action before you now. Authorize the city manager to sign the deal points.
Do we need a motion for that?
You do need a motion. You need action for that.
But
Right.
to be clear, the deal points are just that. They're gonna go and they're gonna be put in written form, and then we again come back and approve or do not approve
Yes.
them. That is correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to execute on the deal points?
I make a motion that we authorize the city manager to enter into negotiations to finalize the development deal points based upon the presentation that we received this evening.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion second. All those in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. All right, and it passes unanimously. Okay, now we move into a public hearing on the zoning at 8:38. And Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Shelley should read it in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shelley, would you read that in? Yes.
Ordinance number 2020-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 60 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Kerrville, Texas, which adopted zoning regulations, use districts, and a zoning map in accordance with the city's comprehensive plan. Such chapter more commonly known as the City Zoning Code.
What are we hearing?
It's the echo.
It's a delay. It's just behind. It's behind.
By changing the zoning and classification of a property generally located east of and adjacent to State Highway 16 south of River Hill Boulevard, and comprising approximately 225.69 acres from a single-family residential zoning district, R1, to a medium density residential zoning district, R2, amending the Comprehensive Plan Kerrville 2050 to make it consistent with such amendment, providing a cumulative clause, providing a severability, providing an effective date, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. And Mayor, we do have 9 speakers signed up, However, this is a public hearing.
Right, sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Received the request for the 225 acres. Just want to cover the process that we've gone through so far. We did receive our application for the zone change on November 1st. From there, we sent notice to all property owners within 200 feet on November 18th. Publication for the public hearing was November 14th for the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing and December 20th for this city council public hearing. P&Z meeting, of course, was December 5th, and city council is tonight and January 28th for that second reading. Future land use plan currently has this area as part of the agriculture and outdoor tourism. As we were going through the comprehensive plan process, we were seeing this property moving more towards a large lot development that we talked about with that previous agreement. With the adjacent properties maintaining kind of that agriculture piece, it was just kind of a continuation of that adjacent to the park. And we had not seen any successful development plans at that time through those discussions with the consultant. Of course, agriculture and outdoor tourism describes just that, but it does include single-family homes as part of those primary land uses. The way this development is laid out in the preliminary plat, that cluster development with the balance of open space, staff and the planning commission, or staff felt that the preservation residential was more appropriate for that development, since it does still include single-family detached homes. But it does indicate that there is that open space that they've proposed, that 40% of the hillsides that they've worked to protect. And again, that is the intent of this place type as far as the future land use plan. That's the comprehensive plan amendment that comes with this zone case to make sure that consistency is remained. Current zoning is R1. Of course, here's the layout we've been discussing. Back here. We do have one correction in the backup material that you have in your packet there. To overturn, city council does not require a 3/4 vote. That was discussed as we were updating the zoning ordinance, but that section of the state code was not specifically adopted to require that supermajority vote. So it is just a simple majority vote, even though it is an appeal to city council. 54 letters were mailed out November 18th to the adjacent property owners. With the amendment to the comprehensive plan, it is consistent. It is also consistent with several other of the policies contained within the comprehensive plan. Again, that preservation residential, maintaining that open space, and providing housing for the community. With regard to traffic, we've talked about the traffic along River Hill Boulevard as an adjacent impact to that property. This is a snippet of the thoroughfare plan that was adopted with the Kerrville 2050 plan. Mr. Hoppy talked about this earlier. There is a proposed arterial or a thoroughfare to connect Highway 16 to Highway 173, which would eventually be a significant decrease for the cut-through traffic from River Hill. River Hill is designed as a collector, although it does not meet our today's standards as a collector, but that still does not account for the pass-through traffic. The traffic counts that we've seen through several studies in the past have shown that it's consistent with other collectors in town. But again, it's not intended to carry that pass-through traffic. This future project, as it comes with other developments, would actually help alleviate that more than anything else, so that it does not become the main pass-through. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Counselor, you have questions?
No. They've been answered more than once.
Okay. Okay, do we have anyone who'd like to speak in favor or against the item?
Mindy Wendeley?
No, I've already spoken.
Okay. Alan Cohn?
I think he left.
Doug Holmes?
He left.
Cindy Anderson?
She just left.
She left.
She left.
Mhm.
Garrett Harmon?
went so good.
Do I get to add all of those minutes?
Yeah, you have 20 minutes now.
Garrett Harmon, 701 Lee Street, and I had the honor of being recently appointed chairman of Planning and Zoning Commission. I was in the hot seat at that December 5th meeting and appreciated all of the comments and the discussion. And just by the sheer fact that it ended up in a 3-3 vote shows you how hard a decision this really is, trying to incorporate all the pieces and the parts. I would, at the beginning of this meeting several hours ago, listening to Chuck and Mindy and Bill, that solved a lot of my angst right away. And so I really want to commend the owner and River Hill residents and city staff really working hard together to come up with the solution. Like you said, is it a perfect solution? No, it's not. Rarely is there going to be one. But I think that we are in a very strong direction. The need is obviously there. What this development does is provide a solution quickly that will be addressed, and they're ready to go now. Some thoughts about why don't we do this somewhere else? If it could have been done somewhere else and made an available product, it would have been done. That need has been there a long time. It takes a development at this scale in order to achieve those price points. D.R. Horton orders hundreds of toilets and bathtubs at a time, hundreds of doors at a time. They get that break on that price and are able to deliver a product at a lower price. And by the sheer numbers of houses that they're able to do that at one time. Other areas in town that might be considered, either one are bad locations. I don't know that the dump and near the wastewater treatment plant are really good locations. And the size really isn't there to achieve those numbers to make it economically viable. So I think that this plan is a good plan, although it's not perfect. It's one that can get traction and get moving on and start to address a need very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Garrett.
Peggy McKay.
Peggy McKay, 103 Westchester Circle. My biggest problem is this particular parcel of land is unique to Kerrville, and we're told that's why people come here. The developer is asking the city for concessions in exchange for right-of-way easements for cul-de-sacs, that 45% rebate that's been talked about on the property taxes. The development agreement on record in Kerr County currently covers R1 zoning and includes a waiver for wastewater, sewage disposal systems because the large 10-acre tracts can handle that. The property is identified, at that time it was Medina River Estates, and Mr. Kamak suggested and gave justification for R1 zoning and I quote, he believes and stated that significant cuts, grading of sites would be aesthetically unappealing and harmful to the natural beauty of the property. Also, utility construction to serve small lots would be very challenging and financially infeasible. This was his justification for support of the R1 zoning. And the city's response, after due and careful consideration, the city has concluded that approval of these conditions are in alignment with the 2050 initiative and the comprehensive plan. Today's, there's a request for zoning change to R2, which will cost the city $5 million in taxes for the concessions that are already on hand in the current recording. Mr. Kamak has renamed the site Vintage Heights and presented a plan for those small lots whose preparation, he noted earlier, would be aesthetically unappealing and harmful to the national environment. And again, those concessions will cost the city $5 million in property taxes. Also, the first three projects out of the that are addressed by the city all require extensive infrastructure, and they the clear direction of the 2050 plan was that the community's priority and the community's choice is infill first. This is on the far reaches of the city limits. And my question is, how can the community's vision of infill first for our growth be hijacked by a few who ignore this community's preference? And the answer of the $5 million, who will get it apparently, is the developer. And Cindy Anderson had it right. This is the wrong project for this property. When Mr. Kamak says he has to deliver level lots, he's got a lot to work with there. Also, the mention of the stormwater runoff would have to be addressed. We haven't had rain for 15 years that shows what happens when this property gets rainwater of large amounts. It fills River Hill Boulevard from curb to curb. Also, there's wet water springs on the property, and I doubt that anybody knows or can identify where those are. And just a few things real quick that were mentioned. We don't oppose growth. We oppose this volume of growth in one small area. And it is not similar to River Hill in that they're going to have 40 acres of open space. River Hill has almost 150 acres just for the golf course. So I think that is not correct. And then when the suggestion was just made that why would you build this by the dump and the wastewater treatment area, why would you put a school, a high school and a middle school there if this property is so bad?
Oh, then here's some more.
Okay.
petitions.
Okay.
Pablo Brinkman.
Feliz Año Nuevo con todos. Happy New Year, Mr. Mayor, Council. I finally got cooled down and you went and turned it up. And then I thought about, after I talked, running out to hear myself speak, but I just said, I'm gonna wait till the YouTube video and do that.
You can do that.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight and to listen. Our firm, we have our ear to the ground on what people are here, where people are coming. So it's great to hear so much passion about Kerrville and so many opinions. There's a few comments that I'd like to make about with the zoning. From what I understand, that it fits with the Kerrville 20 plan. Drew touched on it a little bit with the cluster and with the green space, and being a part of some of the Kerrville 2050. There's several people that were a part of it, that I sat at tables with, that asked for this very thing, that have now come before you and are opposing it. So I kind of sit back and go, it's great to be a part of something, but now that it may be next to your neighborhood, did you not think of that, think of those things? So to Kim's point, to your point, to Delane and Judy's and Gary's, nothing's perfect. But
we do have our ear to the ground on a lot of different things, and from what I understand, with the cul-de-sacs and the way the roads are running, that it has satisfied city works, it has satisfied fire departments on how it is. I know they're not going to set us up to fail safety-wise. I've got I say a lot. I've got 3 different developers and prospects, I should say. They're not clients yet, but they're prospects that are looking to Kerrville. They're looking to how this is going to go tonight. I've got 2 that are looking for, they're not 200 job, but they're 20 job, they're 30 job, and they want to, they know that this is a hot button. I've got another one that's just looking to see how city is going to respond to this, to something that is in the Kerrville 2050 plan that we've been asking for, and now it's come before us. And if we're going to say no on the zoning, on how this whole thing's going, and yes, I should have filled out for 5, but I'm talking on 5 right now a little bit. I want to applaud Mr. Kamek with Chuck, what he's doing. It's rare, and this is kind of what Ms. Siegerman said, it's rare for a developer to do things that he doesn't have to do. You touched on it. He could do R1. We could have 2-story houses that abut the back of the young lady that just left that has a house there. He could have that. We could have all 3 of our feeder roads from River Hill. That could be done. He could be, from what I understand, he could be under construction now. So he is coming, spending $1.5 million. Kim said possibly up to $3 million to try to do this, because he understands this is what Kerrville is. This is the future of Kerrville. This isn't a guy that's coming in here just to make a quick buck. This is a huge development. I think it's probably going to take 5-6 years, depending, to probably get this inventory sold based on inventories now and known. There were some other facts that were quoted tonight about 5,000 homes teed up. That's incorrect. But I applaud that we just passed 5. I think R2 is something that'll make this development a further enhancement to Kerrville. Thank you all.
Do you have any other speakers?
George Baruti.
George Brody, 1616 Glen Road. I'm just a little bit confused because all along I'd been viewing this as sort of this zone change request, sort of a cover for council so that you guys could vote down the zone change and therefore appease River Hill, while at the same time approve the tax abatement thing that we just did. That would appease the developer. So what is the obvious difference if you approve this zone change? What happens to the development that wouldn't happen without it? Do you all know? I mean,
What they're asking for that needs to be R2 is changing the width of the lots across the front from 50 feet to 45.
right. So what's the physical difference? Like, are we getting more homes out of it? We get less? What?
Less homes.
Huh?
From the original plan.
I mean,
This
he's
plan.
giving us some things that he would not have to give us
Right.
if we stay in R1. He's working with us on open space, parks, all of
I think
those
the open
kinds of
space
things.
was already there. The stubbed off streets is a change. And a privacy fence is a change.
But in R1, he wouldn't have to do any open spaces. He could,
Right, so
Take
he's
every
giving
hill
you
down.
that to get what? What's the R1? I mean, what's the R1 get you that the R2 does? Or what's the R2 get you that the
You can
R1
do the
doesn't?
math and figure it out.
What?
Maybe Drew Paxton could answer that question.
Sorry, Mr. City Manager, it's not a silly question. It's actually the reason we're asking to have the change. I'll take my answer off this side.
The R2 does allow for a 45-foot lot. It also provides for a reduced setback from the R1, which was part of their original development plan and part of their original request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mary Ellen Summerlin.
Mary Ellen Summerlin, 105 Turnberry Circle. I served on the APOR subcommittee. I went to the first meeting that after the Planning and Zoning Commission, mostly to say that I was not hostile to the idea, that I didn't think it was going to be so bad. And so what happens? I get put on the committee. I would like to say that the reason I'm here is that I advised the committee when the New Deal points came out. That is an amazing movement. We should go and say thank you, even if we are not 100% happy. So, since I told everybody else on the committee they should come, I came to tell you that you have done a fabulous job. Now, this is exactly what we elect you to do, is to referee between conflicting interests that come up in our town. There's nothing worse than land use problems to bring these up, because you've got the rights of the property owner, the preferences of the neighbors, and then the best interest of the whole community at large. And you're the ones who have to balance that. I'd just like to say that you've done wonders in 30 days with the distractions of the holidays to come up with a compromise that is reasonable. Is everybody happy? Heavens no. We've got people who think the price is too low, people who think the price is too high, people who think central planning. Suddenly they're fans of central planning. You guys ought to just decide where everything in this town's going to be. Nobody's talked much about property rights except their own to keep their values. All that is just the nature of the game. You've done a wonderful job. I consider it local government at its best. Probably won't hear that from anybody else, but that I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary Ellen.
That's all the speakers that have been signed up, but it is a public hearing.
Yeah, okay. Bill?
Bill White, 513 Oakland Hills Lane, got that 2 in a row. I think that I can probably speak as knowledgeably as anybody concerning this issue. In my view, once the whole deal was worked out, the whole discussion about R1 versus 2, as long as we have the protections we have, it's off the table. And I don't feel, from my perspective, and I think anybody that has followed this as closely and been as involved will reinforce this, that if there's anything in that zone change that is going to negatively impact us, as long as you've done what you did, or the city has, and obtained the waivers that we needed. And so I think for us it's a non-issue.
Good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else? Okay. At 9:02, we are out of the public hearing, and I want to lead off this time for just a few comments. The question was raised about in the 2050 comprehensive plan. We talked about infill, about available properties in the city where you could build. I will tell you that on Travis Street, at the end of Travis, and then Lytle, you'll see some examples of that. Bruce has developed a map of the entire city where there are infill possibilities, so that a local builder could come in and do building there. The other thing that was mentioned, Mary Ellen mentioned the issue of central planning. I will tell you that one of the things that we struggled with in this was this. Okay, you've got a developer who, with his good money, buys a property, and it's R1, which means you can do residential. But then there are folks who don't want us to let him do that. But given the state laws on zoning and our zoning ordinance, if somebody has bought a piece of property and it is, and here's the particular zone, that's really capitalism to let them move on that. Okay, I got to quit. Okay, other comments or questions by the council? Okay,
I'm good.
Good.
all right. Do I have a motion in regard to this matter?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-03, zone change, Vintage Heights, appeal P&Z decision, public hearing, and first reading.
All right,
I'll
okay.
second that.
Got a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the upraised hand. All right, and the second hearing will come at the next council meeting. Okay, we move to a consent agenda, and Ms. McLennan, will you read that in?
Nobody wants to.
Okay, the consent agenda.
Mindy, we're not through.
You don't want to?
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
4A, resolution number 01-2020. 4B, resolution number 02-2020. 4C, City of Kerrville Stormwater Master Plan. 4D, purchase of a Bobcat skid steer T870 in the amount of $68,807.90. 4E, minutes for the City Council workshop held December 10th, 2019. 4F, minutes for the City Council regular meeting on December 10th, 2019.
Okay. Is
No one-
anything
no one's-
pulled by a council member
Yes,
or
I need to pull,
citizen?
I need to pull item 4C, please.
4C, okay.
I make a motion that we approve all items on the
Oh, go ahead.
consent agenda with the exception of 4C.
Okay,
I second.
all right. All in favor of that motion, let it be known by the raised hand, and we're holding out 4C. Okay?
I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Oh, you need to recuse yourself from 4C? Okay, okay, all right.
So we can just,
So can we go ahead and?
we can go ahead and approve it then?
Yeah.
Okay. I will move,
Go ahead.
I will move that we approve 4C of the consent agenda, City of Kerrville Stormwater Master Plan.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Gavel in this public hearing at 9:07. Ms. McElhannon, if you will read that in.
Okay. All right. 7. Resolution number 03-2020. A resolution allowing a conditional use permit for automobile dealership, used auto sales on approximately 0.45 acre, part of lots 5 through 8, block 15, Westland Edition, and more commonly known as 404 Junction Highway. We do have one citizen speaker signed up.
Okay. Mr. Paxton.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for a conditional use permit on 404 Junction Highway for used automobile sales. There were 31 letters mailed out November 18th, that December 5th Planning and Zoning meeting. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Property is designated in Strategic Catalyst Area Number 4. The northwestmost area, a narrow band of commercial and industrial land uses that nearly touch the city's border with Ingram, is along the State Highway 27 corridor. The defining characteristics of that are of course, the State Highway 27 Northwest Gateway and the major intersections coming into town, both for community and regional commercial. And then closer to the west end of that, you have your heavy commercial and light industrial. There's an aerial photo of the property, the existing parking lot. The adjacent zoning to the north is R1 and R1A. To the east and west on Highway 27 or Junction Highway is C2, and there is one partial block of C3 across the street. conditions that were brought up by the Planning Commission with regards to parking and other, the parking would follow the zoning code based on these square footages for the mixed use of this building. The conditions that were brought up, there is correction to your resolution. There is no concept plan because it's an existing building and an existing parking lot. The other conditions do apply. There to be no more than 12 vehicles at any time displayed on the property for sale. And the protection of encroachment of the right-of-way, they're going to place parking blocks 2 feet off the property line so that it doesn't creep out into towards the curb line. And then any other zoning regulations, such as the parking we discussed, would apply. Planning Commission recommended this for your approval. I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
I meant to go look at this, and I'm still having trouble. Where is this? Where is it from downtown?
It is west of downtown.
West.
Out by Waterburger.
Whataburger's right there on the
You can see
right.
Whataburger roof.
Oh, gotcha.
Right
Yeah,
across
yeah.
the street from Sears.
What did this used to be? I mean,
It's currently a print shop, and this will be in addition to the print shop.
oh, and there were consignment vehicles out there often.
That's correct.
Okay.
With the new zoning code and the gap, it is no longer allowed without the conditional use. That's why they've requested it.
So the building that is there will stay. They'll just use the parking area for
And you can actually see in
automobiles.
this, in this aerial.
It's being used. Is that an alley there between the?
Yes. Yeah, there actually are existing vehicles from when the aerial was taken, I believe in 2016. There is an existing alley. I don't think there's any improvements. I'm not positive
Doesn't
there's
look
any
like
utilities
it.
in there.
But there might be some fences. But
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 03.
We have-
We gotta
We got a
somebody
speaker.
speak
Public
to it.
speaker, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, it's all right.
He did.
Oh, we did?
Yes, he did it. Not us.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay,
Now can I make a motion?
yeah, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 03-2020.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Okay, all right. Now, how soon will we see cars on that lot? Tomorrow.
Maybe tonight.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Gavel out of the public hearing at 9:12. You will read the ordinance number 2020-04.
Ordinance number 2020-04, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2018-19, which created tax increment reinvestment zone number 1, City of Kerrville, Texas, by amending the composition of the Board of Directors for the zone, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, and providing other matters relating to this subject. And there are no citizen speakers signed up.
Okay. Ms. Major?
Good evening. This ordinance amends the previous ordinance that created the TERS where the mayor and the four of you were designated as the TERS board. And so, and the ordinance before you outlines that issue and allows you to make appointments to the board. And it also advises you to go ahead and designate your chair and your vice chair out of those appointments. And the ordinance further outlines the terms of the board members. They will not serve more than 2-year terms. And that 3 of the members will be 1-year terms, and then 2 of the members will be 2-year terms, so that you have the staggered terms. And so that's the ordinance before you today, is to allow you to create a board based out of your constituents, as you do with your other boards and commissions.
Okay. Makes it a citizen board as opposed to a council board, okay?
Correct.
Okay, council, questions, observations?
No, I had questions they already answered.
Okay. All right, do we have any speakers?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I hear a motion in regard to this 2020-04?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2024-04 to amend the Board of Directors for Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 1, City of Kerrville, Texas, to allow appointment of board members by City Council in lieu of City Council serving as the board, and at time of appointment designate the chair and vice chair from among its appointments.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion second, all in favor, that'll be known by the raised hand. All right, that is passed unanimously.
I didn't read it.
Okay, 9, ordinance, second reading, Ms. McElhannon, if you read that in.
Ordinance number 2020-01, second reading. An ordinance declaring the adoption of amendments to the City of Kerrville, Texas Charter in accordance with the adoption of Propositions A through O and Q at the special election held on November 5th, 2019. Adopting the charter as amended, providing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, providing an effective date, and providing other matters related to the subject. And we do have one citizen speaker signed up.
Okay.
So this is the last step in the process to adopt the charter. And this is necessary to basically issue the order, and then we'll start getting it to the Secretary of State and publishing it, putting it in our code book, and it'll be all done. So no changes since first reading.
Okay. Okay, we have a speaker?
He's declined. He's
Okay.
passed.
All right, do we have any discussion by the council? If not, a motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the adoption of ordinance number 2020-01 on second reading to declare the adoption of various amendments to the city charter and to adopt a newly revised charter.
I'll second.
Oh, Mr. Cochran was first.
Let's get-
Okay.
I yield to Mr. Cochran.
Okay, all in favor of that, number 2020-01? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, ordinance number 2020-02, Ms. McElhannon, please.
Ordinance number 2020-02, second reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Boards and Commissions, Section 2-91, Senior Services Advisory Committee of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kerrville, Texas, by amending subsections A1 and A2 to decrease the membership of this committee to 14 members, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, and providing other matters relating to the subject. No citizen speakers are signed up.
Okay, council, you have any questions on this one? Okay, is there a motion for this?
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-02 on second reading.
All right.
I'll second it.
Second, okay. All in favor of that motion, raise your hands, unanimous. Okay. You know, of the few folks remaining here tonight, I just want to say something. Dale Trees back here, he's been a part of our Recovery Community Coalition. This is his birthday, and he's spending it
Oh my
at the
gosh,
city
you're
council.
kidding.
He's spending it at the city council.
Oh my gosh. You need a cake or something.
No.
Okay, do we have items for future agendas?
Yeah, happy birthday.
Okay, board appointments, number 11. Ms. McElhannon?
Appointment to the Kerr Emergency 911 Network Board of Directors.
I tell you what, unless there's objection, let's deal with all of these together.
Can we do that?
Except for Pete.
Is that kosher,
Can
Mr.
I
Hayes?
don't know if we can. Because we have to name them, don't we?
Yeah, we
Well,
need
I don't
to,
think we
we
can
be very
talk
clear
about
who you're appointing for which board, so I think it'd be just easy just to kind of go through it.
Okay, all right, then.
I'll make
yeah.
a motion that we appoint, that we appoint the Kerrville Police Department's Communications Manager, Francisco Galvan, as the City of Kerrville representative to the 911 Board of Directors.
Second.
All right. All in favor of that?
Yeah, raise your
Okay.
hand.
11B.
I totally lost where I'm at, but,
Library Advisory Board.
okay, I got that.
Appointment to the Library Advisory Board.
And I will make a
There's an
motion.
echo in here.
I will make a motion to accept two applications that have been received as appointments to the Library Advisory Board, Megan Bean and Aaron Sullivan.
All right, we got a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. All right, Recovery Community Coalition.
And I will, oh, I'm sorry, she's
Yeah,
got to
go
read
ahead,
it in.
read it in.
Appoint members to the Recovery Community Coalition.
Okay, what I would like to make a motion to do, we will renew the reappointments, Steve Palter, Claudia Rickner, Richard Stoltman, and Dr. Kendall Young. Then, for new appointments, we would like to appoint Krista Lovett as to fill a spot for number 4. And when I say the numbers, these are the different categories that they fill. Leslie Merrick for number 8, Brittany Andre for number 2, and the vacancy that has been vacant for a while, we would put Michael Brooks, and that will be for a number 1 position.
Okay, to hear a motion?
That was the motion. I
That
know
was
I'll
the
make a
motion.
second.
Okay, do we have it? Yeah, okay, then let's get a second.
Well, I still have a question. Sean Driggers.
Sean's going to, he's being replaced by Krista.
Okay.
Krista Lovett.
Okay, did you have 4, though, that were
Yes,
expiring, and then the vacant?
Krista Lovett.
Okay.
Don Elder is being replaced by Leslie.
Okay.
Blair is being replaced by Brittany. And then Michael Brooks is filling the very last one.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion in that regard?
I'll second it.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay. We have, what's the next one? Senior Services?
No, oh, yes, it is.
Appointment to the
It is.
Senior Services Advisory Board.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, on this one, I make a motion to accept the 2 applications for the 2 vacancies that we have. And those applications are Marilyn, Sismic, I believe, I hope I'm saying that right, and Dwight McDonald.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All right. We've got a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay.
And I would just like to add, we had just really great applicants this time. Was very, very pleased. So, and it just worked out. We were able to use everybody, so appoint them. So,
All right. Okay, good. Would you read in at 11E?
Appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this item is eligible for discussion in executive session.
All right. Do we have a motion in regard to executive session?
I move that we move to executive session for planning and zoning appointments.
Okay, under 551.
Oh, I'm sorry.
074.
Thank you. 551074.
Right. All right.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of going into executive session? Okay, it carries, it's unanimous. 9:28, we are back in session, and is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that we reappoint Tricia Byram, reappoint David Jones, and appoint Hunter Patterson to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All right,
I'll second that.
okay. Would you give the names again?
Reappointments are Tricia Byram, David Jones, and new appointment Hunter Patterson.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hands. All right. We are adjourned at 9:29.